No, you can't. The social responsibility.
Can I? Yeah. So thank you so much. Can I ask you this, what is your, yours? Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say, I think I would use that one, but you don't remember.
Should let me be too. Hold on.
You know what?
Okay, let's don't do anything to it. Now the jury. Yeah.
You all ready?
Your Honor, thank you, Your Honor, we all ready.
All right, let's bring the jury in.
He's 13 and 19 submission.
All rise for jury.
That's the Zoom on the academy. That's-
All jurors are present, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please be seated, everyone. Good morning. Were there any issues with the admonition overnight? All right, wonderful. Ms. Profumo, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
If you don't care, just to restate your name for the jury.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Detective Abigail Chrisman, and good morning.
Okay. So behind you is a still. Do you recognize this as a recording of a statement that you took from Devonen Briggs on February 23rd, 2019?
I do, yes.
Okay. Detective Chrisman, is the whole point of sitting down and speaking with a suspect to elicit information?
Yes.
Okay. What kind of tactics were you using in this interview with Mr. Briggs?
At this point, we were trying to get information and figure out what had transpired that night.
Okay. And have you reviewed this recording in its entirety prior to testifying today?
I have, yes.
Okay. Can you tell us what time this interview occurred, approximately?
I would say approximately 10:30 p.m.
Yeah. Okay, yes. And I do believe that is when he arrived. I think we will be starting, the time up there looks like it's a little after midnight. Does that sound about right to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, Your Honor, the Commonwealth does move to enter the entirety of the defendant's statement as exhibit number 24.
No objection,
25.
Judge, we would join that.
All right, so admitted, and I have it as 25.
25.
As exhibit 25. Thank you,
I
Your
think
Honor.
that's- yeah.
Do I have your permission to publish this
Yes.
to the jury? Okay.
You know what we're doing. You know what we were talking about. Okay. Okay. Now, because of the circumstances and everything that happened, because of the actions, I had to read you right. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to be in trouble. That doesn't mean anything, but because of the circumstances surrounding the situation that happened, I have to make sure you're doing it. Okay. So I brought you a copy, you can follow with me, I'm gonna read it to you, okay? You're here at 701 West Ormsby. Here's the So before we ask you any questions, you must understand your rights and the right to remain silent. Anything you say can or will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to talk to a lawyer prior to any questioning or making of any statements and have him present with you while you are being questioned. If you cannot afford to hire a lawyer, one will be appointed by the court to represent you before any questioning if you desire one. You may stop the questioning or making of any statements at any time by refusing to answer further or by requesting to consult with an attorney prior to continuing the questioning or making any statements. You understand what I'm asking? Okay, do you have any questions about it whatsoever? No? Okay. I have read the statement on my rights and I understand what my rights are. I am willing to make a statement and answer questions. I do not want to wait at this time. I understand that what I am doing, my promises or threats, have been made to me and no pressure or coercion of any kind has been repeated. Do you understand that? Okay. If you would like to do that, or you find this top line right here. Hurt? No, oh my goodness! Oh, that crack all the way down. All right. Can I call you Devon because you're driving home, Mr. Briggs? Devon, okay. Tell me what happened tonight. And kind of start, you know, with today, and let's work our way down with what transpired.
We're going to go to Olive Garden originally.
Okay.
I changed my mind. You know, I was like, oh, let's go to Olive Garden.
Okay.
Go to Olive Garden. We were sitting there and we got like an outside room,
Okay.
so we sit out there first. You know, eventually people come in the door. We see another group of ladies. It's like, okay, let's see, come up and go inside. She's like, yes. Come inside, on the right side, you know, close to the door, there's pretty on his face. We was there for a little bit, you know, I had my phone to on nerves. And I really wasn't paying attention when we came in. I just seen a lot of kids come in, somebody with, I don't know. All I seen that was like just swing around and, you know, sat on the seat. And, I don't know how many it was. I mean, there was kids coming around and we got that carried off. And they were standing up, the adults were. You know, the kids, I think one made it, I'm not sure. And then the kids, you know, not kids, well, you know, hyperactivity, you know, she kind of steps on me a little bit, you know, kind of understand what about my shoe. And then the time goes by, she gets a little bit more random, she steps on me again, didn't say anything, and then she steps on me again and like, tries to, you know, like, use my thigh, you know, to, I guess, lift up in the chair. And I'm like, I'm surprised, I'm like, oh, what you doing? So, you know, I'm like, and then hit the fan. Not shortly after that, her mother says, to be honest, I don't know what she said. She maybe don't touch my girl or something, that's not your daughter or something like that. And to be honest with you, I don't know my response. We just went back and forth. She hollered, of course. I wasn't hollering, but you know, she hollering, blah, blah, blah. I'm telling her, blah, blah. I guess it may have been her boyfriend, father, maybe. He got in my little cousin's shirt was tight. So he steps in the way and he's, you know, kind of coming towards me. I said, hey, I said, you know, step back. I said, don't come in closer. Because I'm not considered gay, so I know what I was talking about. I said, hey, don't, you know, step back. Don't come in closer. You know, he kind of heard me. It took a little bit more. I said, hey, step back, man. And then, you know, I guess one of his buddy got with somebody, you know, she kind of chilled. The other lady stood in the background. And of course, you know, I respond, blah, blah. And then she had another friend. She says something to my wife. I'm not sure what she said. And then she goes and she says, I don't see how they let people like him out of the box, or blah, blah. And I said, out of the box? I said, no. I said, you're the one that can't, control your kids. Your kids is running all the way around. You need to have them contained. And then I really don't know what she was saying after that. I guess it was her boyfriend, maybe husband. He was a simple he approaches me. I'm still sitting down. He gets real close, so I stand up immediately. He shows me. As I'm going to my pocket, I see him reaching back, and that's what happened. I looked up for a minute. I was shocked, because that's not my plan. I stood there, and I turned around. I started seeing people run. I turned around. I stood outside for a second, and I don't know if I pulled up my phone and tried to call the cops again, and I just heard my wife yelling, like, why did you do that or something? She was yelling, and I don't know if my phone back in my pocket or if I've been calling the cops or still there, but I followed her to the car. I said, you can't really see me, blah, 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 I'm gonna get in trouble. She was like, call cops. I was like, that's what I'm trying to do. I've been calling, nobody picking up. So of course, everybody scatters out. People were busting out windows with chairs. So she's like, of course, she's scared and everything. She's like, I want to get away from her. I don't know, what's going on. I'm like, don't go too far. I'm still trying to call cops. If we leave, they're going to say, play the scene. So she's like, okay. So, not sure what we're doing. We slowly, kind of circling around, still trying to get still trying to call the cops. And I think she might have slightly paused for a second, around where we was in the dark area. Called the cops maybe 2 more times, no one answered. So I said, go back, around where we are seen so they don't think we left. But she's creeping around. And so I'm going to go over here on this side, on the mall side. She parked, I called her 2 more times. We seen that cop, and I guess she might have, panicked a little bit. And she didn't drive off, but, let the car through. And he came up to me and said, did you guys come from the mall? He knew where we came from. He was like, no,
Okay. Well, I want to go back over this because I got lots of questions for you. We're going to take it step by step. What I need you to do is try and think. It's really hard for me, like the conversation and everything you guys had. What was said. Like we need to know that stuff. I know it seems kind of small and minor, but the details are extremely important. Okay. So we'll kind of go through step by step. Okay, and ask you some questions. So you and Brittany decided to go to Olive Garden. What time did you guys got there?
To be honest with you, I have no idea.
Okay. So you guys are there, and does the family come in before or after? Were they already there when you guys got there, or did they come in there? Okay, how long were you guys there before they came in?
Maybe like a minute or 2. So maybe about 18 minutes.
Okay. Okay. So, and then you said there was a group of people that left, so you guys went inside, like no alcove or whatever. And if so you enter in the door of Olive Garden, were you guys sitting on the right or were you sitting on the left? If like you're facing the hostess desk is up here, doors back here. Okay. Okay, so you guys are sitting on the right. And where were you sitting on that bench? Were you sitting close to the door, on the other side, closer to the bar?
We were sitting towards the door.
Okay. You were next to on the right side, okay. So you guys are sitting there, and the family is there.
Yeah, so not too long after.
Not too long after, okay. And how many were there?
Well, there was actually one in the cave. There was a little boy because he was sitting right next to me.
Okay.
And I even think, and it made me one of the gentlemen, you know, was like, you know, she was a little boy. So I know it was a boy, and obviously it was a girl. Obviously it was another guy. And two other women, but that's what I don't know.
So 4 adults? Is that what you're telling me? Okay.
Maybe
Three, maybe 3 kids, okay, okay. So they're all there, little one person sit next to you. One of the gentlemen helped them scoot over a little bit.
Yeah, when they first come in.
When they first come in.
And
And then the little girl, which one first bumped into you? Was it the little boy?
No, I don't think the boy don't.
The little one?
It was just a girl.
The little
She was
girl, okay.
kind of all over.
Okay, and she was like, was she trying to sit down?
Well, she wasn't next to me at first, so
Okay.
I'm not sure what she was like in, you know, like, I'm not sure what the kid was doing. I just know she was stepping on me, I didn't see anything, and I even noticed that one of the guys, you know, he had seen him because he seen what off the shoe. And she did it again, I did the same thing. And then she did it again and tried to pop up on me, and that's when, you know, I kind of, no offense, but I kind of like,
Okay, just pushed her?
you know, just slightly.
Okay.
And then,
And was she sitting on the bench or was she standing?
she was standing.
She was standing at this point?
Get up on me.
Okay, gotcha, okay. So you gently, you know, kind of pushed her a little bit, okay.
You might have been like 3 years old.
Gotcha, okay. And then at that point, what happened?
Her mother, it doesn't seem like she said it immediately.
Okay.
But her mother was like, it's not your daughter, don't touch her, something like that.
Okay.
For sure, that's my daughter.
Okay.
I know there was a lot of that, that's my daughter, don't
Okay.
touch. My response, to be honest, if anything, in my opinion, get your kids, control your kids. I mean, I'm sure I said more than that, but to be honest, I don't.
Okay.
Because everything, when she got disrespectful, I kind of, I don't know.
So, and when you say, I don't know, you get mad or upset?
Yes, like,
You got mad?
yes.
So you say something along the lines of, well, you need to control your kids or something to the other lady?
Once I heard her say, I don't see how they let people like in and out of the boxes and stuff.
And was this like immediately, okay, so the little girl, you push the little girl, she right there off the shoe, like, she leaned on you. And that's when one of the females, the mother said something,
She
she don't
was
let
going
me
on
know.
for a long time.
Okay, and she just, did she, what exactly, so did she just keep repeating, like, don't touch my daughter, you know?
That was a night.
Okay, and then you countered with, we need to get your kids under control.
I know I said that for sure.
Okay.
To the second lady.
Okay,
I said, you know, you need to have more control over your kids, you know. They're running all the way around there. Get control of them.
yeah,
Or you're trying to say that I should be in the box. No, get control of your kids because me and Brittany are on our phone, really oblivious to you guys. You know, like, I was in my own world and Brittany was against the wall in her world.
so they made it like a derogatory comment towards you over
Yeah. Well, that was after, you know.
After
Her
what?
comment was after the first graduation.
Okay, about don't touch the, put your finger on my
Yeah,
daughter.
she kept going for a while, and her husband or boyfriend got in the way.
Okay,
He started, I don't know what he was saying, but I know he was coming close, and that's when, like I said, whoa, did it again, you know. And then he stopped, because I think he got the picture. And then, the lady, she was still in the background saying something, you know, but he was trying to get her to be quiet at that point. Like at that point, he was pretty much like this. And she was, you know, kept chatting. And I'm sure I said something there. But, you know, Brittany gets back on her phone. You know, my head's back down. This lady, I heard her say something to Brittany, I don't know what it was. But when she crosses back and, act like they want to stand back in line, she says, the box, the box quote. And then this one said, maintain your kid, get them under control or not. And whatever she said, I guess her boyfriend wanted to be the bigger man. And while I was still sitting down, he approached me very quick. I stood up, he pushed me. I reached for my gun. I seen him cocking back. And of course he didn't get a punch off, but that's why I did that. I mean, I'm not going to just,
So you guys are going back and forth. I'm going to back up just a little bit. So you guys are going back and forth, and they're running their mouth. They're saying all kinds of different stuff, which you can't recall any of that, right? You don't remember all
just the girl about,
Okay. And not the child's mother, right? Just the other.
No, the child.
The child's mother.
The first one.
The first one. Okay. So she's saying stuff. You make a reply at first.
Mm-hmm.
Do you continue to say anything to her while she says stuff to you? You're going back and forth. Okay, so it's a verbal argument between the two of you guys. Okay.
I mean, she's the one that's on 10. I'm chilling, but I'm saying what I need to say. But she's loud, making, the scene.
Okay. So you guys are kind of going back and forth, and at that point, she makes a comment about being in a box or something. The other lady said that. While you two are still going back and forth? Okay.
Everything
Clarify that for me. So you two are going back and forth.
First lady.
The first lady. Okay. What happens after?
Gas station.
Okay. And then this guy, I think you said someone was a little bit of that. Okay. So someone was a little belly stepped in. It's okay. That's how you remember it. It doesn't matter. So the belly stepped in and tried to hold her back.
Yeah, he gets her out of the way.
Okay.
But he's supposed to proceed.
Okay.
Stop.
Okay.
Takes a little bit more. So they stop. Just like, I got a little more stern. Like, I'm not playing around. But, there's a lot of y'all. It might not business. We're in this corner. Back up. And, that's it. But I know basically they don't play around, especially the crew.
I'm sorry, Detective Chrisman, did the defendant just say, but I know Mexicans don't play around?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Did the defendant just say to you in this interview, but I know Mexicans don't play around?
Yes.
And then he further states, especially if they're in a crew.
Yes.
Okay. Who do you believe he was referring to when he said Mexicans don't play around, especially if they're in a crew?
The victim and the other witnesses and the children.
Okay. And then just for the jury's knowledge, can you just say who the victim's family, who this group of people, just name them?
Yes, so it's Jose Munoz, the victim, Jose Rodriguez, Perla Flores, and Linda Flores, and then the 4 children.
Okay, so that's the crew you believe he was referring to?
Hey, Your Honor, may we approach?
You may.
I can appreciate what the Commonwealth is attempting to do through this witness, but I'm going to make a preliminary objection at this point to her asking the detective to interpret the evidence for the jury. The jury is entitled to hear the evidence and decide for themselves which portion of that evidence is relevant to the case. The other thing is up to the jury to decide what they're hearing and what that means, not to have the detective explain the evidence to them. So I'm going to object to interpretation. If they're asking whether a specific thing is heard on video, that's up to the jury to decide what they hear, not for the detective to say this is what you're listening to. So I'm objecting to interpretation.
There's no evidence that the crew met the kids.
Right.
And they can argue that, I suppose, in closing. Remember, Judge, they told you for a year, we're not saying evidence of racism.
And now they're saying
Or
it's
not,
racist.
however, they have adamantly said that the defendant has never said the word Mexican, and he just did. I think that it's appropriate,
To
given the
them.
fact that the detective was the one who did the interview, to ask her impression on the interview.
But that's
all I was doing.
interpretation.
My
That's-
questions were over.
That's exactly the problem.
All right.
She can't.
There are two different issues here, from what I understand from Mr. McGee. The first is asking her to explain what she thinks he meant by something. I'm going to sustain that. All right. I do think
Okay.
it's up to the jury to determine who he was referring to when he said Mexicans. It is certainly relevant because that has been brought up by the defense. I do think I will allow her to state what is heard on the video, though, because one, I'm having trouble hearing it, and understanding it, but I do think that's proper for her to state this is what the defendant said.
Okay, yes, Your Honor.
Judge, and I understand that, but it's every time, we're going to, obviously, every time they want to make a point, they stop it and repeat it. If it's clear, that's not appropriate.
I'm allowed.
We'll move on. We'll see if it happens.
Yeah, I don't expect this to be a 3-hour
No.
replay of,
No.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, Kamal's just point out, the audio is as good as our system in here that we can do
It's
it.
terrible.
Yeah, and they're not hearing anything, so we'd be allowed to read this in.
Right.
We could go read it back and forth, and that her stopping and saying, is this what he said here, is this what he said here, wouldn't be, is not inappropriate. I think you had appropriate the context. Clearly, the detective, we would say, could say, he's talking about the Jose and Jose, and when he refers to Mexicans. I mean, the interview, I guess.
We just got through
Right, but
this.
that's exactly
No, no.
what I ruled.
That, you know,
Can I speak and finish, and then you can
already
call me,
ruled.
but you're not, I'm not, I don't care if you already ruled. Can I finish speaking, and then before you interrupt me? That I understand that was the way the question was asked, but that she should be able, if she wishes to go, to say, I mean, clearly, he was talking about, I mean, if you read the whole, I guess the court isn't hearing it, he's
I
like,
think it's clear who he's talking about, but I don't think the detective cannot be asked, how do you interpret these words?
okay, I agree with that.
So I could ask the question, who was he talking about?
Well, that's the same problem.
You
No.
can ask her opinion.
It's the same.
You can ask her what he said.
Okay.
You can ask her what he said, but you can't ask her what he meant by what he said. Because she's not in his head.
Well, he says
And
it
it's-
though. Like that's what he says.
Does he say the Mexicans named Jose Munoz, Jose
No, but that's
Rodriguez?
who he is referring to.
Sure.
Like that's who he
That
is referring to.
And that's up to the jury. And
Okay.
that's up to
Okay.
for you to
Okay.
piece it all together for the
Okay.
jury. But
You have to go through her exact question instead of, you say opinion, or you say, here when you ask him about Jose and he says Mexicans, we can do the word for word. It's just
Okay.
that when we get into opinion and your interpretation,
Okay.
that's
The
what
interpretation.
you don't have
Okay.
to tell the jury what, I mean, that's, yeah.
I know Mexicans, they don't play around, especially the crew. And he chilled out. She was still saying a couple of things in the back, but eventually he got her chilled out. Everything stopped for a second.
Okay.
She said something to my wife.
The other.
Yes, that was
Okay.
I'm sorry. The other lady said something to my wife.
Okay.
I don't know what she said. I know Brittany didn't say anything, and if she did, it had been very sorry. And she, you know.
But it was not enough that it got your attention.
No, not the first time.
Okay.
When, you know, she kind of, it was like she kind of made the point to go over towards Brittany and say whatever she said.
Okay.
And then she walked across me, and then
Okay.
she walked, you know, back across me. That's when she made sure I heard, I guess, what she said immediately.
Okay.
I mean, the first one.
Okay.
She goes, I don't see how they let people like him out. Should be in the box.
Okay.
That's when I said, no, you need to control your kids. Get them under control, you know, they're running around with all about. And that's when the other guy stepped
Okay.
forward.
So the other guy comes forward.
Without saying anything, he just
Does the same thing. Okay. And you are,
made him never exchange words.
okay, and you are still sitting at this point?
Just like this.
Just like that?
Well,
Okay, on your phone. So he steps forward.
Mhm.
What do you do after that?
he comes right up on me, like literally. I say, the bench I'm sitting in, I'm standing just like this.
Right up against the
Right up against, that's how close he came to me.
Okay.
He pushed me, I went back a little bit, that's how I had enough room to go like this.
Mhm.
And I seen him, you know, cock him back, and that was
If I talk like me, like get ready to punch you?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. And at that point, you pulled your gun?
Mhm.
Okay.
And that's when, like everything, I was like, I looked at him for a minute, and I heard everybody start screaming. I seen, like, little people start running out, and I was just standing in the door, people were running out, because I didn't know what happened. And then when I was out the door, I was still sitting there like, I I don't know what to do here. And I don't know, like I said, if I tried calling, or if I did actually get a call through, but I heard Brittany holler, like, what are you doing? And she's like, come on, we need to call the cops. Excuse me. And I don't know if I said I'm trying to or I did, they're not picking up. Excuse me. But when we got in the car, we immediately shut off.
Right. Let's go back to the shooting itself, and I know, because we need to be really detailed about this. Okay, I know, it's scary, I know things happen fast, but we need to really think about that, and you need to tell me as much detail about it as possible, okay? So, he approaches you, sorry, yes, we'll say that, so we gotta get you shot. So, he approaches you, okay? And at that point, you were sitting down, but you stand up, okay? And he pushes you, right? Okay. And then you said you kind of go back. Are you right or left-handed? Right, so you carry your gun on your right side, okay? So you fall kind of towards the right, like put your hand down to catch yourself, okay?
No, I didn't catch myself.
Okay, but you kind of like went backwards.
Yeah, I'm going back. I
Lean back,
I
okay.
fall back
I got
because
you.
the bench, the bench is so high, and I still have that support.
Oh, I got you, okay. So you didn't completely fall
No,
back.
I didn't fall
Okay.
right back down.
It kind of leans a little bit, okay. And at that point was when you reached and you pulled your gun. And what happened after that?
You got shot.
Okay, okay, and I get that.
I was saying about.
Like, how did you, so, did you just straight out shoot him? Did you, like,
He was so-
right, move and shoot him, did you?
No,
Tell me about that.
He was.
You'll bring him, yeah,
He hung up on me.
okay.
Stand up. He pushing me. I'm like this. I'm out. And he's so close, with the point. My shot was actually like this.
Okay,
Like, I didn't, nobody seen my gun. Cause, it was just like this. He was so close.
okay,
I didn't have room to stand my arm under that.
okay. So you were saying that you shot from down here,
Pretty much.
from that hip level, when you
Yes,
shot?
pretty much.
Okay. So,
I seen him want to punch me, and I was like, I know I'm going to hit him because he's the only person in front of me. I'm just going to pull the trigger.
okay,
But I'm not about to get punched. Y'all not about to jump me. That's not what I was here for. Since y'all escalated to this, unfortunately, I got to defend myself.
and what was your mindset throughout this? Like what, when he stepped towards you, what were you thinking?
It wasn't that time.
What do you mean? What was no time?
It
So big, is that what you're saying? What was no time
He
saying?
came up on me that fast.
Okay. So, are you saying that your initial, reaction
I had to
was?
stand up, or I felt that he was going to maul me while I was sitting on the bench.
Okay. And did he ever make contact with you when he tried to punch you?
Oh, when he punched me?
Yeah. Did he make contact? I know you said
He
you
pushed me.
swung. Yeah, right. He pushed you,
Mhm.
but then he said
I
he
was-
kind
I
of
was
hopped
too
back.
fast. I was too quick.
You were too quick.
I wasn't meant to do it.
Okay. So at this point, you aren't really thinking, you're just reacting. Okay. So you shoot from here, at a hip level when you come up. Was your gun in a holster or was it, okay, so it was just just tucked in your waistband then? Okay. Excuse me. So you pull your gun, shoot him around hip level, okay? And then after that, you exit the building,
I stood there and I actually looked at him
okay?
because
So where was he at this point?
pretty much in the middle of the, bench of the tree.
Right in the middle, where you're laying, was he laying on his back or was he laying on his
No,
stomach?
he was on this side.
On his side, okay.
Kind of like, he's on his side, kind of, squints a little bit.
Okay. Okay.
And I looked at him for a second, and I heard them screaming, people were running, even I seen a couple people, run past me, but I didn't know, so I turned around, I'm like, okay, I know they're called cops. So I stood there in the open for a little bit, and like I said, I don't know if I did call y'all at that time, but I know I was trying to attend,
Okay.
and I heard Brittany holler. she was far there.
So how are you feeling? I mean, what is the thought process? Like, so you shot somebody, you know what I mean? How are you feeling? So when I say feeling, I'm like mad, upset, angry at the situation, sad, you know, that's confused. Okay. And I can understand that completely. So you try and call 911 sometime between, you know, you're trying to get through multiple times. Okay. So,
And obviously the line was hot.
of course, yeah. And you said people were running around.
Yes, and once we got in the car, calling, people, you know, busting the windows out with chairs, and Brittany, you know, she was wanting to get away, she was scared. So she said, I'm going to go around here, and I said, okay, you're not from the scene though, you're going to get, not only me in trouble, but you're going to get in trouble. She said, okay, keep calling the cops. I said, I am, calling. So I'm like, okay, nobody's picking up, go back around there, you know, because they know where we're in, go back around there. So that's what she did. She go around the building, and we still in the crowd, we came back there, we crossed, and stopped the park.
Okay.
But in that meantime, I was still trying to call the cops. Stopped the park, I called the cops, I think somebody had picked up, or called one time when we were stopped, nobody answered, and maybe I called again or somebody called me back. But that's when the officer had already got us. So, you know, I was like, never mind, you know, he's already here. And I think she might have called me back because, you know, might not understand how I got too fast. And I mean, I had it rush on the phone because she was like, hey, hands up. So I was like, hey, I'm cops right here, I'm getting. And so, yeah, that's what.
What kind of gun do you have? Or are you carrying?
Stove the food. That's what it is.
What is it?
Stove the food. It's like a regular 92.
But it's called a stove the food.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know colors? Numbers? What's the finish on it? Is it
Black.
And you said you didn't have it in a holster, just in your right hand? On the right side, right? So, how many times did you fire a weapon?
Just one time.
One time? So, I know you said earlier that you were kind of mad when they made comments, you know, making some comments, when she made a comment about the box and all that kind of stuff. And you like,
I didn't really get mad. Someone made it one time down here, and this was towards the end. This was once everything had kind of slight pause, everybody stopped. She started back up. So we didn't really argue. She made that comment, and you know, I said, "You need to get your kids under control." You know, same tone I am in. Said, "No, you need to get your kids under control. Don't run around here everywhere, you know. Sometimes you control your kids." And so I don't really think we argued or whatever, because I don't think she may have responded.
and did you say anything, like make any like racist comments or say call any names, anything like that? Not even in the heat of the moment, you know. You just say
get your kids under control. You need to contain your kids.
Okay. And I'm sorry, my thoughts are kind of all over the place. That's the questions I'm talking to you. So, do you have a concealed carry? All right, you do. Okay. How long have you had it?
2012.
Okay. So you've had it for a while. Okay. And you know how to use your weapon. Okay. You go to gun range. Okay. Okay. You know how it works. You know the ins and outs of it. Okay. Have you ever been in a situation like this before where you felt you needed to pull your gun? Why did you pull your gun today?
Because he pushed me, and I knew he was about to get some trouble.
And by trouble, you mean?
I was by myself, there was a group of them, I was gonna go down.
And when you say go down, you mean like they're gonna take you down?
Yes.
Or?
Of course.
Okay.
That's how it is.
So like that, I'm just clarifying, I'm just trying to make sure we're all on the same page here, and I understand what you're trying to tell me. Do you have any questions? That's what we're gonna do. Gotta go do a couple things, we're gonna figure some stuff out. So sit tight for me. Might need to ask you a couple more questions. I can't think of anything right now, but give us just a little bit and I'll make it. Are you okay for right now? You go, okay, give me just a little bit, I'm gonna leave this with you, and we'll be right back, okay?
Detective Chrisman, where did you go during this? There's a break here. Where did you go?
I went into my office. At this point in time, while I was interviewing the defendant, other detectives are still working on processing our crime scene, doing more witness interviews, and trying to figure out more of what's going on out on the scene to get as much information as possible about what had just transpired. So at this point in time, I went back to speak with my coworkers to figure out what information they had so we can look at the totality of the circumstances at this point and figure out what other evidence we have, if I have any more follow-up questions with the defendant, to make sure we're getting all of the information.
Okay, thank you.
Alright, more question for you, okay? What I would like to do to clarify a lot of our questions, I kind of want to act this out, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you slide your chair kind of like over you, okay? And I'm going to, I'll one at a time, call for it. I'll be the one that kind of steps up, okay, to show the guy that pushed you, okay? What I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna tap your shoulders, okay? And stay with the same like that. Yep, and take it back. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna get a pin, and we're gonna say it's your gun, okay? So put it in your waistband, and you have your gun. What's on your arm? So where you had your gun, that's what the pin is. Right there, okay. Alright, so, let's walk through this. One step at a time, from the beginning to the end. Okay, so go ahead.
As far as,
So this is the second female approaches your wife and says something. Do you hear what she says to your wife?
so I'm sorry, tonight?
Yeah.
No, I didn't understand.
Okay, so she says something to your wife doesn't respond, and she walks
I
past.
it's just weird.
Okay,
But she did make a point, because she went all the way to the front door, and then she comes back across me, and then she, and the box, I'm people like that should be at the box.
and then what did you say?
I made no comment, I said, you didn't, can I use my hand? I said, yeah, get your hand.
You can say, say the exact word, give us the exact word, yeah, but, right, but give us the exact word, everything that you said, because I'm sure you all wasn't nice to each other at this point.
No, actually, I was chill.
I mean, you haven't been chill, but I know some of the words wasn't coming out, like, so you need to get your kids, and you say you need to get.
No, that's the truth.
Okay.
I said, you need to get your kids together. They running around here and everything, get them under control. And I guess this guy didn't like that. I guess it had been his woman. I guess he didn't like me talking to women like that, so that's when he stepped up to me.
Sorry, was your hood up or was it down? It's down, okay. And sorry, side note, at any point did you have your hood up while you were sitting there on the bench when all this was going down? You don't think so? You think it was down the whole time?
I could be wrong, because I went back and forth.
Okay.
So I want to say my hood was off, we do it inside.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be so.
Okay.
But I think it was all.
Okay. At the time when the second guy approaches you, was your hood up or down?
I was looking.
Definitely off, down.
Okay, Detective Christman, in this line of questioning, you asked the defendant if he had his hood up or down, and he answers down. However, you continue with this line of questioning, and you do ask him again. Why do you continue with this line of questioning despite the defendant telling you that his hood was down?
We're trying to just get some, this is a detail that was brought up by some of the witnesses. So we're trying to get the information from him to verify some of this information that we had gotten from the witnesses that had been on scene. It seems like a minute detail, but it's something that we're able to get his statement on, look at the witness statements to see how valid our witness statements is, and if it's correct, if things are matching up and we're getting the same information from multiple witnesses.
And were things matching up?
I believe so at this point, yes.
Okay. And did you have anything on your face, hat on, anything like that?
Just
Your nose ring, okay. No, did you have any sunglasses on your head, anything like that?
Oh, yeah.
You had glasses on? You had your
eyeglasses.
eyeglasses? Okay, just eyeglasses, okay. All right, so, you got, second female comes up, she walks by, makes a comment to you. You say something to her, and that's when he steps up. Okay, so he gets up here.
Gets real close. It comes fast.
Okay, so he's coming up, he steps up to you, what do you do? Go ahead, you're talking, no, you're fine. That's why we're doing this, so I can understand. Okay. Okay, and then he pushes you.
Usually when I stand up.
Okay, so does he push you like directly on your chest, or does he
Like.
straight up? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
He
he pushes you like this.
Dr. Christman, I'm going to stop this here again. So in this clip, we see you reenacting the incident with the defendant. The defendant articulates to you how close he and the victim were, and at that time, was the defendant sitting or standing when who were you pretending to be?
I was pretending to be the victim. I was
Okay,
interviewing.
so when you pretending to be the victim approached the defendant, was he sitting or standing?
He was,
And I can replay it. if
will you
you'd like.
replay, please?
Yes, I will.
He gets up here.
Gets real close. It comes fast.
Okay, so he's coming up, he steps up to you, what do you do? Go ahead, you're talking, no, you're fine. That's why we're doing this, so I can understand.
So when I first step up, he's sitting, and then I know it is. I'm sure for him, because we're trying to reenact things, and I'm a stranger to him. But for a detective, it's good for me to see exactly how he responded. So that's why I wanted to reenact this. So I told him it was okay to show me what he had done and to get close. So
Okay.
we can understand. So he stood up.
So prior to him standing up, you take a step back.
I do.
Why
Yes.
do you do that?
I do that he seemed uncomfortable with it, so I stepped back because I didn't want to make him uncomfortable. That's not what I wanted to do.
So did he confirm to you in this, the initial position was when you first approach him and you're standing directly in front of him and he is sitting, that is the position that he confirms that he and the victim were in at the time of the incident that he is describing?
Yes.
Okay. And so you step back because why?
He appeared to be uncomfortable, and I took a step back to give him a little bit more breathing room. Like I said, I am a stranger, and I know this is a situation for him where he's trying to explain, and it's important to get all the details. So I take a step back to give him a little bit more breathing room while he's trying to explain what had just transpired.
Okay. So did he ask you to step back?
He did not know.
Okay. So okay, so the defendant says to you before he gets up, he says, I don't want to invade your, and he's laughing a little bit.
Yeah, like I said, I think was, like I said, he was uncomfortable initially when I stepped up, so I took a step back because he was concerned about being closer to me.
Okay, how close was he to you?
I would say at this point I mean, this was after I had taken a step back, so.
Before you had taken a step back. I'm
Before I had
sorry.
taken a
Yes.
step back.
Yes.
We were probably within a foot and a half. We were very close, you know, trying to show, because I was trying to understand exactly how close the victim was to him.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, and then he pushed
So
you.
usually when I stand up,
Okay, so did he push you like directly on your chest or did he?
like,
Straight up, okay.
mm-hmm,
Okay, so
he
he
pushed
pushes
me.
you like this. What did you do? Okay.
And you know, I still move, and I come like that. And then,
So did you, how did you do? You had to rack around? Okay, so you racked around.
I don't keep.
You don't keep around in the chamber? Okay, so you're
It
drawing.
was one in the chamber when he picked it up, because, you know, the automatic.
Yeah, but when you first did the report to use it, okay, you had to rack
And
around.
he was close, so I just did that.
Okay. And then you're not being 100% because you know where you're showing. The angle. Because I can tell you this much, we know he was shot over here. No, okay.
I don't have the shot up there. I've never raised my hand like this. I had that camera in there.
So you didn't come up like this and shoot him like that.
Somebody hurt my hoodie, I don't know, but I didn't definitely not raise my gun up like this. And I was being sneaky, you know, low key, so, you know, now, like, it's in the moment, I don't know, 45, 15, 50, 90 degree angle, 180 degree. I know, I tucked back, while I was tucking back, I see him pulling back.
Pull back like this, and you're gonna hit you.
And then I shot.
Okay.
That's all I did.
So then there's wounded up here.
Okay, Detective Kristen, I'm gonna stop it here again. Briefly, let's walk through this. Did the defendant just say, and this is quotes, while I was cocking back, I seen him pulling back?
Say that again.
Did the defendant just say, while I was cocking back, I seen him pulling back?
I believe so, yes.
I can replay it if you
Please do,
like me to.
yes.
It's right here. Your Honor, can I approach?
You may.
This is the transcript of the interview.
Okay.
Page 11, and line 401 through 409. I'm just not sure. Okay, so you finished reading, I'm so sorry, you can let me know when you finished reading.
Okay.
Okay. So did the defendant just say, while I was cocking back, I seen him pulling back?
Yes, he did.
Okay. So when he says cocking back, and again, I can replay this, what is he doing with his hands?
He appears to be manipulating the top part of the firearm, which is putting a round in the chamber of the gun.
Okay. In order for this to occur, and in this video, you see him using the pen that you provided him as the gun. He had already pulled the gun out prior to racking it.
Yes.
Okay. So, to make sure this is crystal clear, in this video, he says he pulls the gun out of his waistband, he cocks it to put it, okay. He cocks it. And so after he says, while I was cocking back, I seen him pulling back, you asked him for clarification on what pulling back meant. Can you please reenact for us what you did in this video to show the defendant pulling back, that he confirmed is what he meant?
I pull back my fist, my arm.
So did the defendant just tell you in this interview that we just watched that he had his gun pulled from his waistband before he alleges the victim pulled back?
Based off the statement here, yes.
Okay.
So I tucked back, While I was clocking back, I seen him pulling back,
Going back like this,
Mhm.
and here he hit you.
and then I shot.
Your Honor, can I approach the witness just a
You
minute?
may.
That's all I did.
And then they
I mean, I didn't, they got cameras in there.
and they can't, it doesn't travel, you know what I'm saying, like,
Yeah, I
entrance
understand.
room was up here, exit room was complete opposite, so it went like this, so we had to have an entrance room up here.
I'm just raising on, but that would be,
Remember your heat of the moment, and if you didn't, it's okay, I'm just trying to understand what happened, because we've got physical evidence telling us one thing, and you're telling me something else, so that's why I'm trying to make sure we're on the same page here.
but I'm saying, even if it was a little foggy, he's so close to me and he's reaching back and punching. Somebody obviously ripped my wood stuff hoodie that I'm mad about and just seen it in here. Anyway, you know, and there was people still right here. Like, you know, his family whatnot. He reaching back, there's no way that I would have got hit first. There's no way I could have came all the way up here. I know my arm never goes like that. I know I get just like Gage boom. Now that might not be, you know, the right angle, but I came back and boom, nobody seen my gun. I never rose my arm up. So I have no, I really don't have no
And like
idea.
I said, I'm just trying to figure out, because we've got physical evidence saying something, and you're telling me something different,
Now, do the
so,
cameras beside me?
no.
No.
Yeah.
I can't tell you, it was the heat of the moment, but I can tell you 100%, I did not carry up like this at all. I can tell you that for a fact. I came just like this, and that's it.
So when he comes up and he pushes you, you kind of go down like this, like, kind
Just like-
of bend your knees a little bit,
Yeah, a little bit.
just a little bit, okay. But you never fall.
Okay.
And at that point, you're,
Pushing up like this, and then,
now, in order for you to pull, so you're wearing this outfit, in order for you to pull your gun, you have to lift your sweatshirt. Or do you just kind of do a drag, you know, as you're,
I've hunted before, I
Okay.
go to ranges, you know, went to the class,
Mhm.
so, I mean, I know how to pull out my gun and
Okay.
switch.
okay, all right. So you pull your gun, you wrap around, and you're right here, pretty much. Whatever the angle may be, but you're shooting
My
from
arm was,
is what you're talking.
let me come up there. My arm stayed down low with my pistol. I doubt anybody can say what the color of my pistol was, except my wife and the officer. And I didn't even see a flash go off. Like, you know, you see some kind of flash, that's how close it was. Like, I never seen a flash at all.
So when you shot him, were we like, was this
Yes,
far
ma'am,
away?
he,
Or not even maybe a foot?
no, he was on me.
Okay.
I just don't wanna, you know,
No,
give
you're
you a
fine,
big
you're
one.
fine.
But no, he's on me.
Okay, all right, so he's not.
And maybe somebody grabbed me, I'm not
Do
sure.
you remember anybody grabbing your sweatshirt?
No, but it wasn't the officer.
Okay,
I didn't do it like that.
yeah,
And,
okay.
but like, I don't know, so somebody was helping him out. I know it wasn't him that grabbed my sweater and was punching at the same time. We're trying
Did any of his family or anybody that he was with try and come after you or anything like that
after
after,
it was over.
after you shot him?
No, they were confused like I was confused. I'm like, this guy, he didn't say anything the whole time. And, you know, things that kind of simmered down, his girl makes the comment, and he still didn't say anything. He just, you know, just comes up on me.
So how did you feel when he stepped up to you?
Oh, I felt, you know, a little intimidated, like,
Okay,
okay, this guy, I'm sitting down, he's about to get me.
okay. And by about to get me, what do you mean?
He-
And I know I'm like, a lot of questions, but I'm trying to understand. Okay, get physical, okay. And what was your thought process at
I
that
need
point?
to get up quick enough
Quick enough for what?
before he gets me.
Okay. Okay,
When I got up, didn't make any contact with him.
okay.
I got up, you know, just, you know, because I'm not going to sit here.
Mhm.
I got up, didn't put my hands up, anything, didn't say anything to the guy. Just been not push up. And he never opened up his mouth the whole time.
Okay. How tall is he?
Probably, I'm about 5'8", probably 5'10", 5'11".
Okay, so he's taller than you.
That's like,
Okay. What kind of build did he have?
he was pretty,
Medium, a large size
yeah,
build?
about
Okay.
it wasn't chunky.
Okay. So, what was he wearing?
I don't know.
Okay. Great. Yeah, here's your personal sorry.
Yes, I can tell you 1,000%. When my ass is that plenty, I did not raise my home run for sure.
We're just trying to make sure we're on the same page, that's most important, you know.
And I'm a part of it, I'm sorry.
What did you do on this day? You shot.
I stood there with my gun in my hand.
How long did you do this?
Around 10 seconds maybe. And I stood there and just like this, like,
And your gun is still in your hand?
yeah, I'm standing just like
Okay.
this.
In your right hand, correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
And I looked at him, I heard people screaming, then a couple people passed me. And I just turned around and spoke at the door, and I was like, my gun was still in my hand. I said, no, I need to put this up, so, you know, I decocked and I put it up, and I said, I need to call the cops. I don't know if I made an actual call at that moment, or if I was pulling my phone out to call before I heard this screaming.
So you said, did you, like, take a round out of the chamber?
I just, you know, pulled the safety off.
Oh, you have to have the safety.
decock.
Oh, okay, I get what you're saying. Okay. So, did you put it back in your waistband?
I wasn't even thinking about the chamber again, or it's
Okay.
or the rank of the chamber.
I knew what you meant. I understand.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about the extra ring in the chamber. I just put it in my pants and Brittany yelled, calling the cops, and I'm calling 9 Brittany. And glasses were shattering. She got even more a little shaken up. I'm still, you know, like, I don't know. That wasn't really nothing going through my head except trying to call the cops and don't move. But besides anything else,
Okay. That is the entirety of the clip that I'm going to show. I do have a couple follow-up questions for you. Have all the witnesses that we heard from in this trial and that you talked to, did any of them say anything about seeing anyone grab onto his sweatshirt, grab onto him, anything like that?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And does the defendant in this interview with you ever state that he believed the victim or anyone in the victim's party had any weapons on them?
No, he
Did
did
he?
not.
Okay. And did he ever say that he thought that the victim was approaching him to kill him or to cause him serious physical injury or anything like that?
Objection, Your Honor. Maybe approach.
Approach.
Your Honor, what the Commonwealth is essentially doing is asking the detective to describe whether the defendant used the language that's used in the statute to define the circumstances for self-defense. Now, the question is whether he said whether either he thought he was in fear of his life or he thought he was in fear of physical injury. He did multiple times, and they know it. But I am objecting to this idea that they're saying the defendant didn't use the specific words in the statute, and that's where they're headed.
It's a mobile beat down.
Right. Right, exactly, multiple times.
She asked a question. I mean, Lou had a day of cross yesterday about
No,
these people that gave, I'm just saying, all she did is ask, did he say this or not? And she said no.
But she's using the language out of the statute.
Well, that's,
I think it's a fair question.
yeah.
I'll allow it.
Okay, Detective Christman, just one more question. Does the defendant ever say he believed that the victim was approaching him to either kill him or cause him serious physical injury?
No, ma'am, he doesn't.
Okay, no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, Detective.
Good morning, sir.
Now, Detective Crispin, let's kind of start out with what your role in this investigation was. Okay? You were the lead detective assigned to this case, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, you received a call from your sergeant assigning the case to you
Yes, sir.
originally. And I believe you responded from home and went originally to, was it the scene originally?
Yes, sir. I went
Yes,
to the
ma'am.
scene first.
Okay. Now, at the time of this investigation, you had been with the robbery homicide division for about 2 years.
The homicide unit only in approximately.
About 2 years.
Slightly over 2 years, yes, sir.
Okay. And was this the first case that you were assigned as the lead investigator?
No, sir.
Okay, so you had, at that point, been responsible for the overall investigation of other homicides prior to February 23rd of 2019. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
correct? All right. Now, the role of the lead detective, it's more than administrative. Essentially, you're responsible for making sure that the investigation is completed and done as thoroughly as possible according to LMPD procedure. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So you have the overall responsibility for the investigation. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, certainly, Detective, you don't go out and do everything involved in the investigation. You actually have support officers and other technicians that help you in the investigation. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, especially with a case of this magnitude.
Especially with a case like this. You can certainly get additional resources if you request them. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And those resources would be personnel. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
It'd be sometimes specialists, evidence technicians, that sort of thing, correct?
Yes, sir.
You can have laboratory analysis of physical evidence requested from our crime labs, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. So your job as the detective is essentially to make sure that the investigation proceeds and then to assess the evidence you receive as part of the overall investigation. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, sir, could you say that one more time?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Your job is essentially to make sure that that the investigation is completed, and then you assess the evidence that you received during the investigation to see what type of case you're dealing with.
Yes, sir.
Is that fair to say? All right, and then your other role is to work with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, ultimately if it's a felony case, to help them in the preparation and the presentation of the case in court. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, after a certain point within the case.
Right, because at some point, the department does its investigation and then it consults with the prosecutors involved to help review that information.
At some point, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, cases like these, cases that involve the investigation of felonies, those cases don't start in the circuit court, where we are now, do they?
No, sir, they don't.
In fact, it goes through a three-step process. It goes through a preliminary hearing, sometimes in district court. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Then a grand jury process to have a grand jury review it, correct?
Yes.
And then ultimately, if a grand jury sends the case to trial, we get here, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And Mr. Briggs' case, it followed that three-step process, did it?
It did, yes.
Right, so we started in a preliminary hearing, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Then a grand jury, is that correct?
Yes.
And now we're here today.
Yes, sir.
Is that fair to say? Now, Detective, as the lead, you participated so far in all three stages
Yes, sir.
of this case. Is that correct, Detective?
Yes.
All right. Now, there was a preliminary hearing that was conducted in this case actually some time ago now. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right, and you testified at that preliminary hearing?
I did, yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Have you had a chance to review your testimony from that hearing at all?
At this point in time, no, sir, I have not.
Okay. Now, I realize the case is a 2019 case, and certainly you've had other investigations you've been involved in, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But you're aware that this case was coming to trial,
Yes.
Okay, and that you were, as the lead detective, were certainly going to be here to testify, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you're aware that you had been involved in at least 2 prior proceedings where you testified about this investigation,
Yes, sir.
correct? But you're saying that as part of your preparation for this trial, you haven't reviewed your prior testimony?
It was requested, but I never received it.
Gotcha. Requested from the court, requested from the Commonwealth Attorney, or both?
I requested it from the Commonwealth Attorney.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's kind of start out with the preliminary hearing. Detective, do you recall approximately when you participated in that hearing?
It was, I believe, approximately 10 days after the initial incident.
Right, so that would be like at the end of February, first part of March of 2019?
Yes, sir.
Is that fair to say? Okay. And during that hearing, you had a chance to testify about the investigation, obviously. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, now, you were asked during that hearing, Detective Chrisman, whether or not you were able to identify any witnesses to the incident. Do you recall that?
Vaguely.
Okay. And again, Detective, when I say you, I'm referring to the overall investigation. Obviously, you yourself can't go out and do all that. Fair to say?
Yes, sir.
All right. So as part of the investigation, the police department went out and identified witnesses and helped to interview those witnesses. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in this case, there were several witnesses that were identified. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
In fact, during the preliminary hearing, you said that there were many, many witnesses
Yes, sir.
that were identified and ultimately interviewed. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, several of those witnesses we've heard from in this case. Those would include the members of the Flores family. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Workers at the Olive Garden. Is that
Yes.
correct? Mr. Briggs, who provided a voluntary statement. Is that
Yes.
correct? And his wife, who was interviewed as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, during the investigation, Detective, I believe you indicated that the department received information that the altercation began as a result of 2 children getting into some type of physical contact or bumping with Mr. Briggs. Is that correct?
Based off the witness interviews, yes.
Okay. Now, when you say based off the witness interviews, you're talking about what the Flores family told you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Certainly what Mr. Briggs said during his interview. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay. And were there any other witnesses who talked about this specific bumping incident other than the Flores and Mr. Briggs?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And the ones that you're referring to might have been employees with the Olive Garden?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, certainly you've been in court and you had a chance to listen to these witnesses testify about the incident, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. From what you gathered in your investigation, Detective, and what you've heard in the courtroom, would it be fair to say that the incident essentially involved this sequence? Mr. Briggs is initially seated with his wife on the table, or on the bench there on the right-hand side of the lobby, the waiting area. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And he was actually seated there with his wife before the Flores family entered.
Yes.
Is that correct? That's consistent with your investigation?
Yes.
The first incident involved one of the little boys stepping on Mr. Briggs' foot. Is that
Yes.
correct? Right. And that little boy was with one of the Flores parents. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, you were here when Jose Rodriguez testified, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And Mr. Rodriguez testified to carrying the car seat into the restaurant?
He did, yes.
Right. And then at some point, Perla's behind him with the other children?
Yes.
That's that? Okay. So Mr. Rodriguez is ahead of Flores, Perla Flores. She comes in with the other kids. And at some point in that process, Mr. Briggs' foot is stepped on. Is that correct?
By one of her nephews,
By
not by
one-
her children.
By one of her children, correct. By one of Perla's children.
According to the witnesses, no, it was her nephew.
Okay, which would be Linda's children.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And in your investigation, did you determine that Mr. Briggs made no reaction to that, certainly no statements to the family as a result of that incident?
Based off his statement, that's what he said.
Okay, well, now you were present here when both Perla Flores and Linda Flores testified, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you recall Perla Flores testifying that Mr. Briggs didn't make any comments, he just gave them a look. You were present when she testified,
That's
correct?
correct.
And then you were present when Linda Fleur testified that when he was stepped on, same thing, he just gave a look, but he didn't say anything.
That's correct.
Correct? All right, so did you receive any information in your investigation that as a result of the stepping incident, Mr. Briggs did anything other than brush his shoe off and presumably look at the fan?
No, sir.
Okay, so your investigation didn't indicate that he yelled at anybody, fussed at anybody, said anything offensive as a result of the stepping. Is that correct?
Correct, the first
All right.
incident.
All right. Then at some point, there was a second incident where one of the children was apparently somehow touched Mr. Briggs. Is that correct?
Yes,
And you received different descriptions in your investigation about what that touching incident was, correct?
yes,
Right. Now, you've received information from Mr. Briggs that as he was seated on the bench, one of the small female children put her hand on his leg as she was trying apparently to climb up onto the bench.
That's what
That
he
was
said.
Mr. Briggs' statement, is that correct?
yes, sir.
And then certainly you've heard different descriptions of how that occurred, correct?
Yes,
All right. From the description you received from Linda Flores, she indicated that it was the little girl's tutu that somehow brushed against Mr. Briggs, correct?
I believe that's what she said, yes.
Okay. And then you heard an account from Linda Flores saying she's not sure how she touched him, maybe it was the girl's dress.
That's what she said.
Is that correct? All right. But Mr. Briggs told you specifically, no, what happened was the girl put her hand on his leg as she was apparently trying to climb up onto the bench. Is that correct?
Yes,
All right. Now, Detective, it was that incident that ultimately led to the verbal conflict between the parties. Is that correct?
to my understanding, yes.
Okay. Did your investigation determine any other reason led to that argument?
No.
Okay, so it was specifically that incident with the little girl that initiated the verbal argument. Is
Yes,
that correct? All right. Now, Detective, we've heard a few different accounts of what happened with the little girl. According to at least one of the witnesses at the Olive Garden, this was Taylor Church, she was interviewed by multiple officers during the investigation, correct?
she was.
This is the young girl, the teenager who worked as a hostess that night, correct?
Yes, sir.
And certainly you were present in court when she testified, correct?
Yes, sir, I was.
And ultimately, in her testimony, she confirmed that she spoke with Officer Miller, one of the scene officers. Is that correct?
Yes,
And during her interview with Officer Miller, she described watching Mr. Briggs, as a result of the touching incident, move the little girl over to her mother. You recall her describing it that way?
I do.
All right. Ms. Turner also testified that the child did not appear to be hurt, correct?
Judge Whitmer.
You may.
Cummels objects to the questions that Mr. McGee is tendering to this witness. Yesterday, he had I think, a fair and broad opportunity to cross-examine everyone. He got the answers he wanted because they endorsed what he gave them. You don't get to repeat all the facts that you like through the lead detective to bolster him a second time. He's not asking her, she's not in impeachment stuff. The lady said, yeah, I did this with the girl, and then he wants to ask her again. All that stuff's answered, so we're going to object to going through all the witnesses' statements to pick out the things that they think are helpful to the case. I understand that, and reaffirm them. I mean, these witnesses, he's not using her to impeach these witnesses. He got all the answers he wanted yesterday by conducting impeachment. So I object to going through the statements again through this witness.
Your Honor, this is the lead detective, and the questions that I'm asking is about information that was gathered during the investigation. This is also information that was collected by the officers that she supervised. What I'm asking is this information part of the investigation? Was this said? The other thing is she was present in court, and when I asked whether or not the witness testified to this, and it's the same information that was obtained during the investigations by the officers that she supervised. A witness's statement is no less evidence than a piece of physical evidence that they find at the scene. They would be objecting to me asking whether a gun was found in the car, based on this standard.
Well, Okay, so I understand the objection to be hearsay and also bolstering. What is the hearsay exception that applies here?
Well, in this case, Your Honor, we're not asking whether it's true or it's not true. What we're asking is whether or not that information was obtained during the investigation. So we're not asking it for the purposes of the truth or falsehood. So to that extent, it would be hearsay. But
What is it being offered for?
I'm sorry, in this case, Your Honor, we're asking simply, at this point, was it part of the investigative information that they received during the investigation? And this is going to be important later as it relates to what the detective testified to before the grand jury. What I'm doing is laying the foundation for what she said before the grand jury regarding the available evidence that she had at the time she presented the case to the grand jury. And this goes to, there's a specific question that the grand jury asked her about what statements the witnesses made about potential provocation for the incident. This was one of the witnesses that was interviewed. This is part of the information that this witness provided, but the detective did not indicate that to the grand jury during the testimony. So we're simply laying the foundation for what the detective testified to at the grand jury. And this is the only way you can do it.
I understand the explanation of what Mr. McGee wants to do, but he's mulling in somebody else's testimony. I have no problem asking, did you talk to her? Did you get a statement this time in place? Did the recorder work? Did she appear? But in instance, let me go back over the content of what she said about what she did with this witness. And what did this witness say? And then that witness say, there's no exception. It was covered yesterday and it came in. He doesn't get to go back through it again. And as the court pointed out, it's rank hearsay, and there's no exception that I'm aware of. So we would object to going back through all the good points from all the witnesses they talked to yesterday whenever they want to make a point.
Again, Your Honor,
I understand both.
Right.
I don't need to hear any more. I'm going to overrule the objection. I don't understand it to be offered for the truth of the matter asserted. It is offered for the purpose of showing what she was aware of when she testified to the grand jury. This is not me saying that you're permitted to go through and reestablish everything that every witness has said. That's not, and I don't understand him be doing that. So I'm going to overrule the objection at this time.
So this is all for this
This is not a
specific
prospective
witness.
ruling on every other
well,
statement.
right, but we're going to have other witnesses that we run into the same problem with because they were interviewed.
I know.
Okay, so
Right,
I'll take everything on a case-by-case basis, all right? But, I mean, to the extent that this is being offered to show what she knew before she testified to the grand jury and how it colored her testimony, that, I believe, is relevant, and I don't think that's hearsay. But, you know, if it's being offered for some other purpose,
That's the only purpose.
I would probably make a different ruling, all right? So,
Judge, would the court object about a 10-minute break? We've been having an hour and a half, you think?
okay, it's 2.
I think so, so it's
Yeah.
9:20.
Okay. Okay, I think we're actually going to take about a 10-minute bathroom break. So it's 10:45. Same admonition applies. Do not discuss this case with anyone, including each other. Don't do any independent research about this case. Do not form any opinions about this case. And please be back outside in about 10 minutes. Thank you all.
All rise for the jury.
Okay, I'll take us off the record. You may step
May I
down.
go back and?
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you.
All right, let's bring them in.
All rise for the jury.
I'll do it with that first. Yeah, if you've already got the document set up for the system. Okay, that's what we did for the hall.
All jurors present, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please be seated, everyone. Were there any issues with the admonition over the break? All right, wonderful. Mr. McGee, you may proceed.
Oh, thank you, Ron. Oh, hello again, Detective.
Sir.
Detective, I was asking you about the interview that you conducted with at least one of the witnesses at the Olive Garden. That was Ms. Churn, you recall?
I did not speak with Mr.
No, one of the interviews that was conducted.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, I guess just for the brevity of the situation, let me ask it this way, Detective. You mentioned that obviously there were a number of witnesses that were interviewed by the investigative team as part of the investigation in this case. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, there
Ms.
was.
Churns was one. Mr. Stephen Bell, he was interviewed. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And he was the assistant manager at the Olive Garden.
Yes, sir,
That
he
night,
was.
is that correct?
That night, yes.
Kyle Young, he was one of the patrons who was there who saw the incident in the lobby. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Right, he and his brother Casey.
Yes, sir.
All right. And Kyle's one came in and testified.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And he had been interviewed, is that correct? As part of the investigation?
Yes, he had.
All right. And then Michelle Halbert, she was the young lady who was working in the restaurant at Olive Garden that night as well.
Yes, sir, she was
Okay,
interviewed.
and you recall she came to testify?
She did, yes.
All right. And Detective, all of these witnesses, they were interviewed during the initial parts of the investigation by your team, is that correct? During the initial stages?
Yes, some of them, yes.
Okay, some of them were. This case, as I mentioned, went through the three-step process. We went from the preliminary hearing to a grand jury, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And if I said the date of the grand jury was April 4th of 2019, would that refresh your recollection?
Sounds about right.
Okay, sounds like the first part of April.
Yes, sir,
Is that fair to
sounds
say,
about
ma'am?
right.
All right, the witnesses that I've discussed, Mr. Bell, Mr. Young, well, both of the Young brothers, Ms. Halber and Ms. Churn, were those done before April 4th, before the grand jury was convened?
Before April 4th?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, some of them were.
Okay, well, those four specifically.
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay, do you have your, okay, so you believe those four were done before April 4th?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, you ultimately did get to a grand jury, and you ultimately told the grand jury essentially what you remember happening during the investigation. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Essentially telling them this is what information we received during the investigation.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct? And during the grand jury process, that proceeding is actually, it's recorded. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is recorded.
Right. Now, certainly it's a private proceeding just with the detective and the officers, but there's a record made up. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, there is.
All right. And have you had a chance to review your grand jury testimony prior to that?
No, sir, I have not.
Okay. Do you recall being asked by the grand jurors whether there were any other witnesses other than the Flores family and Mr. Briggs that had been interviewed as part of the investigation?
I don't recall.
Or you don't recall that question specifically?
At this time, no, I haven't had the opportunity to review those, so I don't recall.
Okay. May we have a moment, Your Honor?
You may.
I think.
All right, listen.
Mark really has it. Mark should have it.
You can borrow what you did. Well, no, you did. Yeah. Okay.
And Detective, again, I know you haven't had a chance to review your testimony at the grand jury proceeding prior to today.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ma'am, we have a copy of a transcript of that proceeding. And I did want to ask you some questions about the grand jury, what you testified to before the grand jury in April of 2019.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I've provided a copy to counsel for the Commonwealth as well for their review. And if you don't mind, I would like to ask you just a couple of questions about it, okay? Page 15. Detective, may I approach you?
You may.
Detective Crispin, if you could, I'm going to provide you a copy of this transcript. And again, ma'am, I know this is the first time you've had a chance to look at it today since April of 2019. You haven't reviewed your testimony, but if you would, ma'am, take a look at that. And I'd like to ask you just a couple of questions about it. Now, Detective, having had an opportunity to look at that, and again, I know you've done probably hundreds of cases since then, does looking at that transcript help refresh your recollection a bit about what you testified to in April of 2019?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Now, at that point in the grand jury proceeding, ma'am, you were asked a question about whether witnesses provided any information to indicate that Mr. Munoz had attempted to either provoke or antagonize Mr. Briggs. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, say the question again, sir.
You'd been asked the question by the grand jury about whether any witnesses have provided information to indicate that Mr. Munoz had either attempted to provoke or antagonize Mr. Briggs in any way prior to the shooting. Do you recall that question?
Yes, sir.
All right. And what was your answer to the grand jury?
That Mr. Munoz said,
Yes, ma'am.
I said no.
Okay. So when the grand jury asked you whether Mr. Munoz had done anything to either provoke or antagonize Mr. Briggs, you said no. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
And this testimony was in April of 2019?
I believe so.
Okay, early April 2019.
Sounds about right.
Ma'am, you indicated in your testimony a moment ago that there were several witnesses that had been interviewed prior to the grand jury proceeding. Is that
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes, sir, there were.
And specifically Stephen Bell, Michelle Halber, Kyle Young. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Taylor Churn, is that correct?
Yes,
And certainly Linda Flores, she had been interviewed as well.
she has.
Is that
been,
correct?
yes.
Now, Detective, at the time of your grand jury testimony, you had access to their statements to indicate what these people had said or what they reported either seeing or hearing during the incident. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. And you had that information available to you when you went to the grand jury, correct?
I did, yes, sir.
All right. So when you went to the grand jury, then you had information available from Mr. Bell, for example, who indicated that he actually saw Mr. Munoz go over and physically strike Mr. Briggs, correct?
Mr. Bell did say that.
Right. And in fact, he said he did it without Mr. Briggs ever striking or hitting Mr. Munoz, correct?
I'm sorry, say that again.
That Mr. Bell, the manager, testified that Mr. Munoz came over and physically attacked or physically pushed Mr. Briggs.
The question was he threatened, to my understanding, from
Yes,
what I'm
ma'am.
understanding here, it asked if Mr. Munoz had threatened or taunted Mr. Briggs.
Right.
Not physically,
Did anything?
yes.
Okay. Well, you were present in the courtroom and Linda Flores testified, correct?
I was, yes.
And she certainly had been interviewed actually twice before April 4th of 2019, correct?
Yes.
She'd been interviewed the day of the incident at the restaurant, is that correct?
Yes, she was.
Along with Jose and Perla, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then she was interviewed on March the 5th, telephonically by you and Detective Baker, is that correct?
It was in person.
In person at her house in Indiana?
Yes, sir.
Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. Now, you received her information prior to testifying before the grand jury in April of 2019, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you were present in court when she testified, correct?
Yes, I was.
Right. You recall her saying that Mr. Munoz went up to Mr. Briggs and went like this?
I do.
Right. And then you were present when she testified that that action to her meant somebody was going to start something, right?
I don't recall her saying those specific words.
You don't recall her saying that specifically from that witness stand?
That she, I'm sorry, ask your
That
question again.
this gesture meant that somebody was going to start something. She was asked that question specifically. Do you recall that?
Vaguely, yes, sir, I do.
And her reaction was that that means somebody's going to start something, correct?
If that was her interpretation,
Okay, would you consider that provocative or aggressive? Detective?
it depends on the situation, sir.
That's fair. During your interview with Mr. Briggs, do you recall at some point approaching him while he was seated in the chair during the recreation, and you were asking him to demonstrate what had happened?
I do, yes, sir.
And you said you got close to him, correct?
Yes,
But
sir.
then you took a step back, correct? And do you remember why you took a step back?
I said it appeared as if he was uncomfortable with me getting it close, so I took a step back. So
Right.
he was more comfortable reenacting the situation that had transpired that night.
Right, so you'd agree then that approaching somebody, getting in their personal space might be a little bit provocative. That'd be fair to say, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, now, you were present when Ms. Flores testified, and she said that Munoz went over to where Mr. Briggs was seated, correct?
She did say that.
Right, and she said that in her statement, correct, the March 5th statement?
I believe so, yes.
Right, and then you were present when Mr. Bell testified that Mr. Munoz went over and literally got in front of Mr. Briggs as he was initially seated, correct?
Yes.
He said the same thing in his statement, right?
Yes.
Right? You were present when Kyle Young testified that Mr. Munoz went over and literally either socked him or hit him with his elbow, correct?
Yes, sir, I was
Same
present.
thing Mr. Young said in his statement, correct?
Yes, sir.
Will you consider all of those things, would those things be aggressive?
Yes, sir.
If that's true, then ma'am, why did you tell the grand jury that Mr. Munoz hadn't done anything to provoke Mr. Briggs?
Because the question was, did they threaten or taunt?
Okay, so would you consider approaching somebody, either going like this or hitting them? Would that be provocation or taunting? Detective?
Depending on the situation, it could be.
What about in that situation, where a man is sitting down and a man that he doesn't know approaches him, gets in his private space, and then goes like this?
If that's how he interpreted it at that time,
Isn't that how it happened, Detective?
that's what he said in his statement.
Well, in fact, he wasn't the only one who said it, correct?
He was not the only one that brought up what Mr. Munoz, the physical action of what Mr. Munoz did.
Yes, ma'am. And you had other witnesses bring that up in the investigation prior to your testimony on April 4th before the grand jury, correct?
The physical aspect of things, yes.
Yes, ma'am. And did you describe any of what Mr. Bell, Mr. Young, Ms. Halber told you in your testimony to the grand jury?
Not when I received this question to them, no.
Yes, ma'am.
Or when they asked me this.
Okay. As part of the investigation into this case, ma'am, like I said, you did the interview with Mr. Briggs at the headquarters, at the homicide office in headquarters, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And we've seen the video of that interview. At one point in the interview, you had asked Mr. Briggs to essentially demonstrate how the child had been moved. Is that correct?
I didn't specifically ask it. I know he showed me on the table how the child had been moved.
Okay, and when Mr. Briggs showed you how the child had been moved, did he describe it as a push or as kind of a gentle nudge?
It was a gentle, he said just slightly moved her, is
Right.
what he said, and he moved his forearm across the table.
Okay, and during that portion of the demonstration, you described it as kind of gently moving the child. You recall saying that?
Yes, sir, I do.
All right. So Mr. Briggs didn't describe either shoving the child or pushing her on the floor or anything to that effect, correct?
No, he did not.
All right. Now, as part of the investigation, ma'am, when Mr. Briggs was interviewed, he told you that he had indicated that he was still in possession of the firearm when he met with the officers, the first responders, out at Jefferson Mall, correct?
I'm sorry, could you ask that one?
Mr. Briggs indicated during his interview with you that he had told the officers who met him at Jefferson Mall that he still had the firearm.
I believe he did.
Right, and in fact, there were officers who went to the Jefferson Mall and met Mr. Briggs and his wife in the car. Is that
Yes,
correct?
there were.
Right. And just for the jury's clarification, ma'am, the parking area where he was located at Jefferson Mall, about how far away was that from the Olive Garden?
I would say roughly maybe a football field and a half. It was near in front of Sears, where Sears is at, Jefferson.
And I think you told the grand jury, and certainly in the preliminary hearing, that it was basically a few parking areas away. Is that correct?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and that it was in the general area of the Olive Garden? Is that correct?
Where the vehicle was located?
Yes, ma'am.
It was a couple parking lots away from where
Okay.
the Olive Garden was.
And you didn't interpret that as part of your investigation, that Mr. Briggs was trying to either flee the scene or get away, correct?
I did not, no.
Right, in fact, that's what you told the grand jury, that you didn't think it was fleeing. Is that correct?
I believe so. I haven't had an opportunity to review.
Okay. Now, Detective, when Mr. Briggs met with the officers at the Jefferson Mall parking lot, at some point, there was a search warrant requested for the vehicle, for the search of the vehicle. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, there was.
Okay, and prior to that, Mr. Briggs had told one of the officers that the firearm is in the car underneath the seat. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Is that where it was ultimately found?
It was.
Okay. And you did a background investigation on that firearm, is that correct? To
I
see-
personally did not, but one was requested, yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. And again, Detective, I apologize because that was the way I asked the question. But when I say you, I'm referring to the investigation.
Yes, sir.
So I do apologize for the clarification. What I mean is that during the investigation, that background check was requested. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. On the-
Right, and when I say you, I'm always referring to you as the lead detective.
I understand.
Okay. Now, in this case, ma'am, did you do a determination of, first of all, the history on that firearm, whether it had been purchased and that sort of thing?
Yes, one was
Okay.
done.
Okay. And Detective, as part of your investigation, did you receive any documentation showing the purchase history on that firearm?
Yes, I believe the trace documentation is what it is called, when you look the history up on the firearm and figure out who it could possibly be registered to or where it was purchased. It's called a trace document.
Okay, and did you request, or was there a trace document requested in this case during the investigation?
Yes, one was
And-
done.
Yes, ma'am. And have you had an opportunity to see that document or review it prior to your testimony today?
Yes.
May I proceed, Sheriff?
You may.
Detective, I'm showing you what I'll mark for identification as defense 2. And if you can tell the jury, ma'am, what are you looking at?
This is what is called a firearms trace summary, and it has the make and model and caliber and serial number of the firearm, and that is run through a federal database, and they look for information on possibly where that gun was purchased.
And the document that you're looking at, ma'am, is that consistent with the document that was requested by your department during the investigation in this case?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and does that appear to be a true and accurate copy of the document that was secured by the department?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay, Your Honor, at this time, I would simply move to identify this as defense 2, but I won't admit him at this point if they give you to.
Okay.
Thank you. And Your Honor, may we publish?
You may.
Thank you. Now, Detective, right next to you is the pointer device here, and there's a little pink or orange button on the bottom. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That allows you to use the laser pointer. And if you can point out on this document, ma'am, where does it identify the firearm that was found during the investigation? Was our battery?
No, sir, I don't think it is.
No. Okay, I think we're out of batteries here. Do we have the pointer available, ma'am?
I believe it's over there in the corner.
Thank you. I didn't want to make you stand up, Detective.
I might have to because I'm short anyway, sir.
Yeah, welcome to the club. Here you go. All right, and if you could, Detective, can you show the jury where it identifies the firearm that was turned over by Mr. Briggs?
Up here.
Okay, and what type of firearm did it identify, ma'am?
It is a Stover Cougar.
Okay, and what caliber is that firearm, ma'am?
It is a 9mm.
9mm?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, and was that the same firearm that was identified during the investigation on February 23rd of 2019?
Yes.
Okay, and what does it say about the purchase history on that firearm?
It shows down here that the dealer, the person that sold this firearm, was from Shooter Supply here in Louisville, Kentucky.
Okay, and does it show the date of the purchase?
It has a ship-to date.
Okay. Okay, and it looks like that's November 15th of 2012?
Yes.
Okay. And does it indicate on there that that weapon went to any other location other than the person that it was delivered to in May of 2012?
Not on this one.
Not on this one, okay. And it shows the same weapon was purchased sometime in November of 2012, is that correct?
Yes, sir, based off this date.
Okay. And certainly as part of the trace history that you do on the weapon, part of that's to determine whether the weapon was ever stolen at any point, is that correct? Or reported stolen, I'm sorry.
Yes, it provides background history on the firearm to see where it was purchased, to see if there was any other illegal activity surrounding the actual purchase or anything like that.
Yes, ma'am. And did you find any of that history with this firearm?
I did not know.
That it hadn't been used in any other crimes, hadn't been involved in any other incidents, correct?
No, sir.
Okay. And that weapon, again, was the ship-to date was in 2012, and it was ultimately turned over by Mr. Briggs in 2019 as part of this investigation.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
correct? All right, thank you. Now, Detective, in addition to the purchase of the firearm, Kentucky has a process, or at least it did at the time of this incident, where a person could secure a permit to carry a weapon. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And during the interview with Mr. Briggs, did he indicate that he had...
You may.
Kummel's objection is relevance.
That it was a legal firearm, that he had trained on using it and had a permit to carry it?
His charge is, did you shoot this guy and murder him, or did you shoot this guy in self-defense? What if the gun's from Mars?
Well,
Or Europe, or stolen or not stolen? I mean, it has nothing to do with any fact involved in this case.
well, Your Honor, the fact that the defendant legally purchased it, went through the process to be able to legally carry it, trained how to use it, and under what circumstances to use it, would be relevant to the choice that he made on February 23rd. I don't know how it could
How
be.
so?
It's already in evidence.
And
They
it's in
played his
evidence.
statements.
Right.
What, are they going to take that out? In addition, he had the gun in his waist.
Right.
And people are going to think that's illegal unless they have the permit.
It doesn't matter, because either way it's irrelevant to the case.
They can argue
Beyond
it
the
doesn't
case
matter.
is, if they had a point to make, they've made it.
No, they introduced
The objection, I think it is relevant. There's also the wanton endangerment charges.
Yes?
Okay.
And that would have, if it was an illegal gun, it would make him guilty of that, or, I'm saying
So
it's
the
not.
trained, I mean, I think the
But-
questions are whether or not he was trained on it and whatnot.
Right. Right. He went through the training for it.
So So we can cross on.
Then
I
that
can
means I
redirect
would
on
lose
that
the
then.
objection.
Yes.
I've lost the objection.
All right, thank you.
And Detective, I'm sorry, I was asking you whether or not Kentucky had a process at the time, whether individuals could go through a training process in order to receive a permit to carry a firearm.
Yes, I believe so, sir.
Okay. And during Mr. Briggs' interview on February 23rd, he indicated he had went through that process, went through the training, and gotten a permit to carry the firearm. Is that correct?
Yes, he did.
And during the investigation, did your team make any effort to verify whether that was true?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
This is pages 233, 233 through 235.
Pardon me, Sam.
Yes.
Yeah. May I approach you, Your Honor?
You may.
Detective, I'm going to show you a few documents here for your review. And, Your Honor, I'll tentatively identify these as Defense 3, 4, and 5, Your Honor.
All right.
And Detective, if you could, I'd like you to take a look at those and ask you a couple of questions about them now. Thank you, Detective. Now, as part of the investigation, did you or your team have an opportunity to review the information that's reflected in those exhibits?
Yes, sir.
And if you can, starting with the first one, can you tell the jury what that first document is?
This first document is what is labeled as a license detail report for carry concealed deadly weapons permit.
And what does that document, what's the purpose of that document, Detective? What is it designed to show?
This shows dates and shows when a carry concealed permit was created and received, and if there were any renewals after that.
Okay. And the document that you're looking at Defense 3, ma'am, does that indicate who that document was issued for?
It does.
And who was that, ma'am?
Devonen Briggs.
Okay. And does it indicate whether or not a permit was issued, and if so, when?
It does say it was issued, and would you like the first date? Or
Yes, ma'am, the first date.
The first created date is November 19th, 2013.
2013, okay. So, in this case, we've gotten so far a record of a weapon being purchased in November of 2012, and then when was the initial carrying concealed received or issued? The 2013 date, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Correct. Well, I guess there's a created date and an issue date. Which date would you like? You want the created date or the issue date?
Let's try the issue date.
The issue date from in 2013 is December 2nd, 2013.
Thank you. And at some point, was that permit renewed?
It was.
And what date was it renewed, according to Defense 3?
December 17th, 2018.
Okay. So a few years later, about 5 years later, it was reissued. Is that
Yes,
fair
sir.
to say? Okay. And have you seen those documents before as
I
part
have.
of your?
Yes.
Okay. And does that appear to be a true and accurate copy of the history that was provided during the investigation in this case?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, I would move to publish Defense 3, but I'll hold off on admitting the police report.
All right, you may.
Okay. Okay. And Detective, this is the document that you were reviewing. If you can show the jury where it shows, first of all, who that was issued to.
Right here.
Okay, and that's to Mr. Briggs. Is that the
Yes.
same defendant in this case?
Yes.
Okay. And Detective, what was the initial issue date on the carrying concealed?
Issue date is right here, December 2nd, 2013.
Okay, 2013?
Yes.
Okay. And then you indicated that there's a date on there showing a renewal. Is that correct?
And it's just above that, December 17th, 2018.
Okay, and in this case, it would indicate whether that renewal was done for the same person that had received the initial permit, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so in this case, in looking at that document, it indicates that a permit was issued in 2013 and then was renewed in 2018, is that correct?
Based off what it's saying right here, renewal, yes, sir.
Okay, and then it appears that there's an expiration date showing whether that 2018 permit is still active, is that correct? Looks like where the column says EXP date is the third column from the left.
Yes, sir.
And what does it show the expiration date on that permit is?
It is December, I believe, 17th, 2023.
So as of today, that permit would still be active, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, thank you, Detective. Now, as part of issuing the CCW, does an individual have to go through training, or at the time, did they have to go through any training in the possession of that weapon or use of that weapon?
I believe so, sir, but I'm not 100% familiar with the process.
Yes, ma'am. If I said it was an 8-hour class, that you have to go.
You may.
She said she didn't know anything about the class. I know the relevance was how do they train you to use them. They don't have a witness to get that through. So I'm objecting to asking her about something when she said I don't familiar with that, when I'm not familiar with it.
That's a fair objection.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, Detective, in addition to the history that we've shown on this document, may I approach you on it?
You may.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Detective, I'm going to show you this one first, and then I'll show you these two. Okay. Okay, now, Detective, as part of a person receiving a carrying concealed weapon, does the state issue a certificate to identify who owns or who has that carrying concealed permit?
Based off this, yes.
Yes, ma'am. Have you ever seen one of those documents before, the certificate?
Yes.
Okay. And did you determine whether such a certificate had been issued in this case?
Yes.
Okay. And did you secure a copy of that certificate as part of the investigation? And again, I mean your team.
Yes,
Secure
sir.
a copy of that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the document that you're looking at what would be Defense 4, Your Honor?
Yes.
Warrant 4? Ma'am, does that document appear to be a true and accurate copy of what was secured during the investigation?
Appears to be, yes, sir.
Okay. And at this time, Your Honor, I move to publish 4.
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay. And Detective, on the document that we're looking at here that you've identified as Defense 4, can you tell the jury what this is?
Based off what it says, it's the certificate of training for Devonen Briggs.
Okay. And specifically, it says that it's hereby awarded the certificate for having successfully completed classroom instruction of 6 hours in live firing exercise as required by statute.
That's what it says,
Is
yes,
that fair to
sir.
say?
Yes.
And what day was that issued, Detective?
The date listed here is April 20th, 2013.
Okay, and so that would be almost 5 years, about 4 years and 10 months prior to the date of this incident. Is that fair to say?
I'm sorry to say that time.
I'm sorry. Actually, 5 years and 10 months prior to the date of this incident in February of 2013. That's when that certificate was issued.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, Detective, in addition to the certificate itself, the person who has the certificate will be issued some type of photographic record. There'll be something to show exactly who that certificate was issued to, correct?
Yes.
Because in this case, you got a name on a certificate, but you're not sure exactly who that is. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and certainly the state keeps a record of who those certificates are issued to, and they memorialize it with a photograph as well as other information. Is that correct?
I believe so. I
Okay.
don't know the exact procedure, but I believe so.
Okay. Now, as part of the investigation in this case, Your Honor, I'll identify the next exhibit as Defense 5. Was there a record made of who that certificate was issued to in 2013? And was there a photograph associated with that?
Yes.
Okay. And as part of the investigation into this case, did your team try and secure those records to show exactly who that certificate had been issued to?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the document you're looking at Defense 5, does that appear to be a copy of the photographic record that your team secured?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay. And, Your Honor, we'd identify that as Defense 5 and would ask to publish, Your Honor.
You may.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, this is the document you're looking at. Is that correct, Detective?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And can you tell the jury what information is included on this documentation, and is there a photograph included?
There is the name of the individuals up here, address, some other identifiers, and then the photo is here.
Okay. And does that appear, based on the information you received in your investigation, did that appear to be the same young man that's charged in this case?
Yes.
Okay. And then the detective, in front of you, Detective, there's an additional document that we'll include and identify as Defense 6, Your Honor. And Detective Chrisman, is that a copy of essentially that same document for issue year 2018?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so.
Okay. And does it include the information regarding who that certificate was issued to?
There is a name and photograph on this document, yes.
And who is the name and what does the photograph indicate or correspond with?
Devonen Briggs.
Okay. And was that document obtained as part of the investigation in this case?
Yes.
And does that appear to be a true and accurate copy of the document your team secured during the investigation?
It does, yes.
Your Honor, we've moved to publish as Defense 6.
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Detective, is this the document that you were just reviewing?
It is, yes.
Okay. And based on what we're looking at, you indicated it has the name of Devonen Briggs as well as his photograph. Is that correct?
Yes. Name is here, and photo here, and the date is up here, kind of hard to see.
Okay. But that's December of 2018, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Detective. Now, as part of the investigation into this case then, would it be fair to say that the information you received indicated that at the time of the incident in February of 2019, that Mr. Briggs was in possession of a weapon that he had purchased legally? Is that correct?
Yes.
That that weapon hadn't been involved in any other incidents that you determined, is that correct?
Correct.
That at least prior to February of 2019, he had gone through the training on the use and possession of that weapon, correct?
I believe so, based off these documents,
Right,
yes.
based on the certificate being issued, correct?
Yes.
That he originally received his certification to carry that weapon legally in 2013, correct?
Yes.
And then he renewed it again in 2018, is that correct?
Yes.
So at the time of the incident, it would be fair to say that Mr. Briggs was in legal possession of a firearm that he had purchased, that he had trained for, and could legally carry at the time of the incident, is that correct?
Yes.
And part of the reason that he trained to carry it, or part of the legal authority to carry it, is the ability to use it in self-defense, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That's legally what the permit was for, to carry a weapon for self-defense, correct?
Yes, sir.
You want me to approach?
You may.
Commonwealth's objection is Ramon, he's made his point. He's asking her to speculate. The issue is so you can conceal it. Now he's like, well, asking her why. I mean, we're beating this horse to death. That's irrelevant. If he was driving a stolen car or not a stolen car, and he could have insurance on the car, and he could have bought it and never had a wreck in it. But if he runs over someone, that's the issue. We've covered this issue. My objection is he's asking her to speculate about why you'd get a CCDW.
Your Honor, respectfully, the detective requested this information as part of the investigation to determine, one, whether he had the weapon legally, two, whether he received any authority to carry it, and three, the documentation shows the training he went through and was a certificate that confirms that he went through the training. My question for her was, does that certificate provide the authority for the person to carry the weapon in self-defense? That's entirely the purpose of the permit.
So
That's by his issue.
I'm going to sustain the objection. I do think we're getting cumulative at this point, and I'm going to instruct them on
Yes,
what the law is, not the detective.
Yes, ma'am. Now, Detective, I had asked you before about your interview with Mr. Briggs on February the 23rd. He actually came down for an interview with your department, specifically with you and Detective Baker. Is that correct?
He did, yes.
Okay. And prior to him providing any information in his interview, he was told what his rights were, correct?
Correct. We
Right,
would.
what we call Mirandized. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, when you say you Mirandize somebody, and certainly the jury's probably familiar with this, but what does that mean specifically?
That means we go through someone's rights that they have, so they're aware of what their rights are before speaking with the police.
Okay. And certainly the person can either decide not to make a statement, is that correct?
Correct?
Or they can provide a statement. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, they can.
And they can do it by themselves or with an attorney, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, in this case, Mr. Briggs decided to provide a statement, and he did it by himself, is that correct?
Yes, he did.
All right, and he did so voluntarily, is that correct?
He stated he understood his rights and willingly spoke with us, yes.
Right, and certainly in this case, Detective, there's no issue that the police treated him with respect and with care. Everything was done professionally with the officers during the investigation, okay? So when I say voluntarily, I mean he did that without any force or coercion, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, during the interview, ma'am, Mr. Briggs indicated that at the time of the incident, right after the shooting, that as he was leaving Olive Garden, he was trying to get in contact with 911. You recall him saying that?
I do, yes.
And in fact, he said he tried to do it several times, but he couldn't get through. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, as part of the investigation in this case, did you request any type of history or a run history with the department to determine whether Mr. Briggs had made any 911 calls?
I did, yes.
Okay. And were you able to secure any documentation to that effect?
I was able to secure the 911 calls, yes.
Okay.
I think we have. Yeah, this is what we're basing.
Okay. You want me to approach?
You may.
Detective, I'm going to show you what I'm identifying as Collective Exhibit 7. And Detective Crispin, if you could, take a moment to look at that documentation, and then I have just a couple of brief questions about it.
Part
347.
That's what's important.
Okay. And Detective, you've had an opportunity to look at Defense 7, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And if you can, tell the jury, what is the top document on Defense 7? What is that email document?
It's email correspondence between a couple different people
Right, okay. And-
regarding the 911 call.
Right, and it was regarding getting information about the 911
Correct.
call, is that correct? Okay, and on the second page of that document, does it indicate whether the 911 call information was retrieved, and if so, what did it indicate?
I'm sorry, could you ask?
On the second page,
Yes,
does it
sir.
indicate whether the 911 data was retrieved? Whether
Yeah.
there were actual calls made by Mr. Briggs?
This shows a list of 911 calls.
Yes, ma'am.
Within this list of numbers, the number that we have identified for Mr. Briggs is not on here.
Okay. May I approach her?
You may.
His number. Starts with 6.
Make sure this is the right one. Should be at 247. Your Honor, may I speak with the prosecutor 1 moment, please?
You may.
Now, Detective, let me ask it this way. As part of your investigation, did you determine that Mr. Briggs had attempted to try and get in contact with 911?
Yes, I did.
And that in fact you tried to do that 3 times, is that correct?
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay, and specifically, that came from your research of the information on 911 calls, is that correct?
No, sir.
Okay, how did you determine that?
Mr. Briggs's phone was collected as evidence for the case. A search warrant was drafted for the phone records. And upon reviewing those phone records from the phone, we could see that Mr. Briggs had attempted to call 911 multiple times.
Gotcha. And were there difficulties with MetroSafe and the number of calls they were receiving on February 23rd that day?
I believe so. To my understanding, due to multiple people trying to call, some had said that it went to voicemail
Right.
due to the call volume, and that some people did have issues getting through.
Okay, thank you, Detective. And as part of your investigation into Mr. Briggs' phone, it did appear that he attempted 3 times to get through to 911.
It did, and it also showed that he had been called back by MetroSafe, and that they had tried to make contact with him even though he was unable to get through.
And Detective, approximately how long after the incident, if you know, did the officers in the 7th Division meet with Mr. Briggs at the parking lot in Jefferson Mall?
It was a short time. I couldn't tell you specifically the number of minutes.
Right, it would have been...
But it was a
like
short
within minutes.
time after the 911 calls came in, they located him.
Okay, got you. So from his phone records, it appears he's contacting 911, calls aren't going through, 1 call comes back but is rejected. Is that correct?
Without looking at the exact times, it appears 3 calls were made out and 2 came in.
Right, okay. And then these are all within minutes of the incident?
Yes,
Okay, and then you testified that within minutes of the incident, he's there at the Jefferson Mall meeting with police officers?
yes,
Okay, all right, thank you. So all that's occurring within the same time?
yes, sir, it is.
All right. Now, Detective, you also indicated that during the interview with Mr. Briggs, and this is the last series of questions I have for you, Detective. During the interview with Mr. Briggs, he was asked essentially why he pulled the firearm. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, and Mr. Briggs indicated that, at least to you, he thought he was about to be mauled or jumped. Is that correct?
I believe that's what his words were, yes.
Okay. And Detective, did you understand Mr. Briggs to be telling you that he felt like he needed to act in his own defense?
I'm sorry, ask that question again, please.
Did you understand from Mr. Briggs explaining this to you that he believed he needed to act in his own defense, that he needed to act to protect himself?
Based off what he was trying to say, it appeared that's why he pulled his firearm.
Okay, and in fact, at one point, Mr. Briggs actually says, I needed to defend myself, didn't he?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so he actually said that during the interview.
I don't recall specifically if he did. I know it was something to that verbiage he did say.
Okay. Detective, I'm going to show you what I'll mark as defense 8, Your Honor. And Detective, we've reviewed the,
I think it's 7.
oh, I'm sorry, is it 7?
I think so.
Okay. Now, in listening to this clip,
I'm sorry,
Detective,
could you turn it up a little bit?
Oh,
I couldn't
I'm sorry.
quite hear it. No, that's okay.
Is that the loudest? I
Okay.
think, unfortunately, that's the loudest
Okay.
we can, Detective. We can try it again.
Okay.
And could you understand what Mr. Briggs was saying in that video?
Yes.
Okay, and what did you understand him to say, Detective?
He said that he was worried that he would get mauled while he was sitting on that bench.
Okay, and when you hear the word maul, what do you understand that word to mean in that context, Detective?
In this context,
Yes,
overwhelmed people.
Attacked, maybe?
In an essence, yes.
Okay. Now, that wasn't the only time Mr. Briggs indicated, however, that he felt that he was in physical danger, correct?
No.
In fact, he said that several times during his interview, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Detective, I'm going to show you the next portion of the interview. And if you could, Detective, I'd like you to listen to it. This is part of the longer interview that the jury watched.
I traveled and I was by myself, everything with them, I was gonna take them.
The only reason they told you I would be like, they're gonna take you down.
Yes, they are.
Okay. Now, this is where Mr. Briggs is indicating to you, Detective, that he thought he was going to go down. Is that correct?
He does say that, yes.
And at some point in that portion of the interview, does he say that he was concerned that there were several of them, that there were more of him than, or more of them than him?
Yes, he does use the word they.
Right, so he's
Them.
referring to the group.
Yes.
Is that correct? Now, Detective, it would be fair to say that was the same group that he'd been in an argument with, correct?
To my understanding, it was, yes.
And the group that Mr. Munoz was part of, correct? Because they all came together? Is that
To
correct?
my understanding, it was, yes.
All right. One second, Detective. Okay, Detective, next, I just have a couple of quick questions about this. We had established that you had a chance to testify before the grand jury in April of 2019. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and during the testimony with the grand jury, do you recall being asked whether or not Mr. Briggs had ever said he needed to defend himself?
I haven't had the opportunity to review it. I don't recall this time.
Okay. And at some point in the process, do you remember telling the grand jury that he never actually used the word defend himself?
I don't remember.
Okay, you don't recall saying that to the grand jury?
I don't.
Okay. Detective, I want to show you a portion of the interview that you conducted with Mr. Briggs on February 23rd. And
I'm not about to get punched, I'm not about to jump in, there's no straightforward. Since y'all escalated to this, unfortunately, I gotta defend myself.
now, during that portion of his interview, what does Mr. Briggs say regarding the need to defend himself?
He said, unfortunately, I have to defend myself.
And he actually used the word defend myself, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But you don't recall being asked by the grand jury whether he said that he needed to defend himself?
At this time, no, sir, I don't.
Okay. Detective, I don't have any additional questions for you, ma'am. I appreciate you answering my question. Oh, may we have one? I'm sorry, give me 1 second, Detective. May I approach her?
You may.
Detective, I wanted to give you an opportunity to look at what you testified to about this before the grand jury. And because I want to make sure you have a chance to look at it, okay? Detective, I'm looking at what the page 5, Mr. Baker.
All right.
And if you could,
Taking it back. It's fine.
yes, sir, page 5. If you could, please take a look here, ma'am, and then I'll ask you a brief question about that, detective. Okay. Now, in this transcript in the grand jury's hearing, ma'am, do you recall being asked the question by the grand jurors? You said he admitted it. Did he say it was under fear or self-defense?
After reading this, yes.
Okay, and what was your answer, ma'am?
No.
Okay. After reviewing that portion of the defendant's interview on February 23rd, the defendant actually did say that he felt he needed to defend himself. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Detective, this time I really don't have any additional questions, ma'am. Thank you for answering.
All right, redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Ramon,
Oh, yes.
did you leave one copy? Did you leave her with one copy?
Of the grand jury?
Did you leave one?
No, that's good.
You may want to set it back there for your reference.
Your Honor, can I pursue it?
You may.
This is what defendant counsel provided you with your grand jury testimony.
Okay, so I know defense counsel asked you a lot about that grand jury testimony. When the grand jury asked you, if you could actually flip to page 15 where defense counsel was pointing to before. So the grand jury asked you about whether there were any witness statements that indicated the victim was threatening or taunting the defendant. And you responded no. Is that accurate?
I'm sorry, can you ask that question again?
Okay, can you look at the grand jury testimony, page 2 at the top? Did you tell grand jury that the victim pushed the defendant?
I did, yes.
Okay, please go to page 3.
Let's go to page 3 at the bottom. Did you tell the grand jury at that point? They can come back.
Okay, on page 3, on page 3. Okay, did you at that point again tell the grand jury that the victim pushed the defendant?
Yes.
Okay. Can you please turn to page 15 of that statement? Okay, so now back to page 15, where I initially started. Defense counsel was asking you about a statement that you made on page 15 about the victim having threatened or taunted the defendant. And you answered no when asked by the grand jury if you had witnessed statements that said that or indicated that.
Yes, I answered no.
Okay. So do you recall any witnesses saying that they heard the victim say threatening things or taunting the defendant in any manner?
No.
Okay. In fact, do you recall any witnesses saying they heard the victim say anything to the defendant at all?
No.
Okay.
He did say sorry at one point.
Okay. Yes, but in regard to taunting or threatening?
No, ma'am.
And then in addition to that, I was saying at all, so you're just saying he said sorry? Is all the witness?
As far as we know, yes.
Okay. And so, do you recall any of the witnesses who have testified in this case saying that Jose Munoz said anything to the defendant until the defendant said he was going to smack or hit his fiancée?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Do you recall any of the witnesses, so have any witnesses testified or given any statements to you even prior to trial that anything occurred between the defendant and the victim prior to the defendant saying he was going to smack or hit his fiancée?
No.
Okay, so no interaction at all?
No interaction.
Okay. So, defense counsel also asked you about the defendant fleeing the scene. You indicated that, did you indicate that he did not flee the scene at the time in your testimony? I don't know if it was grand jury testimony or PC hearing.
I believe so.
Okay. So, where was the defendant arrested?
He was arrested at our office.
So where did police find him after the
He was
incident?
located at Jefferson Mall.
Okay, and so is that the scene of the crime?
Olive Garden was the scene of the crime.
Okay, so not Jefferson Mall parking lot.
Right.
So he was not arrested or found at the scene of the crime.
At Olive Garden, no.
Okay, thank you. At the end of the interview with the defendant, and I can give you So at the end of the interview, what did the defendant tell you he did with his gun? Do you recall? I have the interview if you don't want to talk to you.
Please,
Okay.
if
Your
you
Honor,
want.
can I approach the witness?
You may.
Okay. This is in the second part of the interview transcript with the interview we just watched. On page 20, lines 791 through 796. If you don't mind just reading that to yourself, please. Okay. At the end of your interview, what did the defendant say he did with his gun after he shot Jose Munoz?
He stated I stood there with my gun in my hand.
Okay, and then what did he do with it, according to his statement to you?
He then walked out of the restaurant. The gun was still in his hand. And he stated he decocked it and put it up.
Okay. Do you know where he put it? He says he put it up.
Specifically in here, I don't, it said he put it back in his waistband.
Yes, thank you. And where was the gun when officers found it?
It was
Do you recall?
under the front passenger seat
Okay.
of the vehicle.
Okay. So during your interview with the defendant, did the defendant tell you where and how he was carrying his gun when he entered the restaurant?
He did.
Okay. Can you please explain a little bit?
He said it was on his right side in his waistband.
Okay. And are you trained on how to handle a gun? You're an LMPD detective.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the defendant's description of how he was carrying his gun, is that consistent with what you know to be the proper way to handle a gun?
Objection.
Approach.
Yeah, respectfully, I believe this is exactly what the Commonwealth objected to. They said that she's not aware of what the training is in that 6 to 8 hour class. So she can't really say whether that training is consistent or inconsistent with what he received in the 8 hour training. She's talking about the training that LMPD officers received. That has nothing to do with the training class that he took. And it's not illegal to carry it in the waistband.
I'm just asking her, she's trained to use a gun, she is an LMPD officer. They were permitted to bring up how he was carrying the gun. I'm just responding to how he was carrying the gun through my question of, is this consistent with how you were trained to carry a gun? I wasn't asking if that's consistent with the training that he had to carry a gun. Everything that she's speaking to, she's able to speak to.
But that's an
I
implication.
also allowed you to get into it, so I'll allow it.
Thank you.
Okay. So is the defendant's description of how he was carrying a gun consistent with what you know and how you were trained to be the proper way of handling a gun?
No.
Okay. And normally, if you were carrying a gun, how would you carry it?
In a holster.
Okay. Okay. Defense counsel asked you about the interview. Your Honor, can I approach the witness?
You may.
I'm going to page 13, lines 490 to 492. If you don't mind just reading that to yourself, let me know when you finish. Did you ask the defendant in the interview whether he pushed a child?
Yes.
And what was his response?
Yeah.
Okay. Detective Crispin, prior to today, and for my final question for you, prior to today, when defense counsel, let me rephrase that. To your knowledge, did the defendant in fact shoot and kill Jose Munoz with a legal weapon that he obtained legally?
Yes.
Okay. No further question, Your Honor.
Recross?
Very briefly, yes, Ron. Detective, You still have the grand jury transcript before you, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Okay. At page 14. Detective, you were asked, and again, you testified to this earlier, so I apologize for rehashing it, but Commonwealth did ask a question about where Mr. Briggs was located. You were asked by the grand jury whether you thought Mr. Briggs had fled the scene, correct?
Can I have a minute?
Oh, yes, ma'am, of course. Yes, ma'am. You were asked before the grand jury, by one of the grand jurors, whether you thought Mr. Briggs had fled the scene, correct?
Yes,
And your answer was no, you didn't believe he fled, is that correct?
correct.
All right, and has that changed?
No, sir, it has not.
Okay. All right, in fact, when he was located at Jefferson Mall, he was met by 7th Division officers, is that correct?
Yes, he was.
And as part of the investigation, did you determine how the officers knew where he was located?
Yes.
Mr. Briggs told them, correct?
I don't know, because of the 911 call
Yes.
disruption, I know there was a description of the vehicle
Yes.
provided by other patrons.
Yes, ma'am.
And officers had seen that vehicle and then made contact.
Yes. And at that point, when the officers made contact with the vehicle, it was sitting still, parked in the parking lot, a few parking lots away from
Yes, sir.
Olive Garden, correct? And that was part of the reason, Detective, that you didn't think he was trying to flee?
Correct.
Is that fair? Okay. Now, Detective, you were asked questions about how you would carry your weapon as a trained police officer. Is that
Yes,
correct? Certainly, the department sends officers through extensive training. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, they do.
Certainly more than 6 hours. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you're issued equipment, both the sidearm as well as the equipment to carry it. Is that correct?
At this time, yes, sir.
Well, right, at this time. Not always, but at this time,
At this
yes.
time, yes, sir.
Now they're actually paying you for it. So the point, though, is that the department helps equip their officers in training. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
All right. It's not illegal for a person to carry their weapon outside of a holster, is it?
At this time, no, it's not.
And it wasn't in 2019, was it?
I don't know the exact time when things changed, but
Okay, okay. But certainly you can carry that weapon outside of a holster. Is that correct?
yes.
All right, and that wouldn't be illegal. Is that correct?
Again, I don't know the exact time when things changed,
Okay.
so I don't feel comfortable saying yes or no because I know there was a change in law.
Okay. Well, let me ask this. You don't have any reason to believe that as of February of 2019, he was carrying that weapon illegally?
Correct.
Okay. And finally, Detective, you took the time, Detective Crispin, to go through a reenactment of what happened with the child, the pushing incident. Is that correct?
I
In the
went
video?
through the actual pushing and shooting incident.
Yes, ma'am. And on the video that we watched, Mr. Briggs explained that he moved the child off to the side. He described it as moving the child, and you described it as gently. Is that correct?
He said in the interview just slightly.
Right. So during his interview, when he said he pushed a child, he didn't describe it as shoving the child to the floor or doing anything that was violent, correct?
No, he did not.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, thank you, Detective. You may step down. Counsel, please approach. I just wanted to address timing. I want to take a bathroom break unless we're done for the day, then I'll...
Judge, I got 2 witnesses here.
Okay, let's take a bathroom break.
Okay?
All right. I just didn't want to... I'll ask. Are you done with your case?
Yes, we are.
They need to
I'll
rest.
ask
I need to make a
But we
DB
could-
motion.
I'll ask if you have any... I'll ask what your next witness is. You can say no, and then we'll take a break.
We could, and we'd be fine if, we'd waive anything. We could do the DV after these 2 witnesses. I know normally we do it at the break.
Well, once they rest, Judge, maybe, well, I hate to, I'm going to make a DB motion. It'll be very brief, and I'll run out and get my witnesses.
That's fine. We'll take a 15-minute break.
No, we don't. Whatever you want to do.
Well, I mean, I need a break, so that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I can't argue DV and get my break.
All right, Commonwealth may call your next witness.
Your Honor, well, Your Honor, those are the witnesses for the Commonwealth.
Okay, does the Commonwealth rest at
The
this
Commonwealth rests, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. We are going to take a break, 15 or 20 minutes. If you all could please, it's 12:15, so if you all could please be back outside by 12:35, we'll say 20 minutes. Same admonition applies. Do not discuss this case with anyone, including each other. Don't do any independent research, and do not form any opinions about this case. Thank you all.
All rise for the jury.
Yes, and I think when you go up to. And then what we're doing is we're gonna do a general motion to kill everybody. Firearms, evidence. Oh,
All right, we'll take a 10 minutes and then we'll handle your DV motion. All right,
Thank you, Judge.
and take us off. Okay, we are back on the record. Mr. Eggert?
Thank you, Judge. Judge, regarding the wanton endangerment charges 2 through 8, defense would move for, the defense would move for a directed verdict on all charges. I'll address the directed verdict, as to the wanton endangerment first, counts 2 through 8. The medical examiner saying the shot came from an incredibly close distance. I can't recall how close. I think he said it could have said, I think he said 2 inches, could have been even less. There was absolutely no chance that this bullet could have struck anybody else at all. All the proof has been that Mr. Munoz was on top of him. It was a near contact wound. It had stippling. There is absolutely no chance that anyone else could have been hurt at all. Jose said he was around there, but that was about it. But even so, no one else could have been hurt because it's a shot to the chest and 2 inches away or less. There's no evidence that these children were in danger, let alone that anyone was in a substantial danger of death or serious physical injury. Neither Linda nor Perla nor any of the children were, nor was Jose Rodriguez. There was no substantial chance or risk of injury to anybody else. Regarding the homicide, Judge, regarding the murder, we would move for a directed verdict of acquittal, even with the standard being like most favorable to Commonwealth. We believe a reasonable juror could not, beyond a reasonable doubt, convict of murder under these circumstances. Under Jackson versus Virginia, there's no doubt that Mr. Munoz went across the room, that he essentially, when the defendant, who was basically in a corner, tried to stand up, that Mr. Munoz forcibly pushed the defendant, shoved the defendant to the point where the defendant could not stand up. Mr. Bell stated that essentially the defendant fell back. I think it was evidence he flopped back. He would have fallen, except he was so close to the wall. At that point, the Commonwealth's own case stated that the man was in the process of punching the defendant. You can certainly kill somebody with a punch, hurt somebody with a punch. In addition, the defendant is there with his wife. He had an absolute right to defend himself. He had absolute right to defend his wife. The punch is in the process of being thrown. They had multiple witnesses to say it actually was thrown. And had it been thrown, our client could have been seriously hurt with a punch, or Mr. Munoz could have gotten the gun, or others could have gotten involved. Recall that our guy's sweatshirt was also ripped. Point being, Judge, this is clearly a case where their alleged victim went to our client, pushed him, shoved him, wouldn't let him get up, and was assaulting him at the time of the offense. And clearly, too, that the defendant believed he was acting in self-defense, which takes this out of any murder, because he said repeatedly, I thought they were going to maul me, I thought they were going to take me down, I was trying to defend myself. His belief is crucial. It takes this out of homicide. For all those reasons, Judge, we would move for a directed verdict as to all charges.
All right, thank you. Commonwealth?
Your Honor, the court's heard the evidence as well as the Commonwealth in terms of the homicide, even under not the most favorable standard that we get this reviewed on. There's plenty of evidence to submit this to the jury on homicide, and there's probably several levels of homicide. As to the wanton endangerments, it appears the Commonwealth's theory is that if the court will recall, the witnesses said that he pulled the gun out. Jose Rodriguez said the gun came right by his face. This was a gunshot that was a through and through. Both bullet exited the body. We've heard several witnesses talk about how close and how proximate everybody is here when this weapon was discharged. And the Commonwealth, although there could have been other people included, those people in the arc of when he drew the gun out, with his testimony told we listed, and I think they would be the 3 adults and the 4 children who were on the bench there on the side were the ones listed in the indictment.
There's just a 2-inch shot.
All right. In taking the evidence as presented in the light most favorable to the Commonwealth, I do believe that there is sufficient evidence to send this to the jury. I do believe a reasonable jury could find that Mr. Briggs could find beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Briggs is guilty of murder, that he was not privileged to act in self-protection. I also believe there is sufficient evidence of the wanton endangerment. I did hear testimony regarding the gun being waved around, and this was a very crowded area with children crawling around, climbing around, and adults nearby. So I do believe there has been sufficient evidence presented, so I will deny the motion for directed verdict at this time.
Thank you. We'll be ready to go, Judge.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I'll take us off the record until we get word that they're all back. I just wanted to note, I did notice that same juror sleeping again during the detective's cross-examination. So, just FYI. I just feel like I should put that on the record. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to take us back off the record. All right, let's bring them in. We can bring them in. Yes, thank you.
All rise for the jury. All jurors present, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please be seated, everyone. Were there any issues with the admonition over the break? All right. The defense may call your first witness.
The defense will call Zach Moore.
Come outside.
Yes, yes.
Good afternoon. Sir, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. And please make sure you speak up so the microphone catches you, sir, okay? Yes.
Could you please state your name for the record?
Zach Moore.
Okay. And Mr. Moore, if you could just keep your voice up, okay?
Okay.
All right. And were you at Olive Garden back on February 23rd, 2019?
I was.
Do you live here in Louisville?
I do.
And where do you work?
UPS.
Okay. How long you worked there?
Since 2013.
2013, so 10 years at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, on the evening of that February 23rd, 2019, you said you went to Olive Garden. Who were you with?
I was with friends. I don't remember which of our group was there. There's a few of us. I know Devin O'Brien, Alexander Hack. Those are the only ones I do remember were there.
Okay. Is it possible there was another one, but, well, you remember Hack and you remember Devin O'Brien, is that correct?
Yes.
And when you got to Olive Garden, did you take a seat on one of the benches?
Yeah.
All right. And if I could, after this incident that night, did you give a statement to police?
Yes.
All right. And did you tell them the truth at that time?
Yes.
Tell them what you heard, tell them what you saw?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'd ask you, at some point that evening, were you waiting for a table?
Yeah.
Okay. Was your attention drawn to some kind of yelling?
Yes, it was.
Okay, if you could just keep your voice up and tell the jury what you heard.
So we were sitting in the waiting area right across. I'm reading on my phone, and I hear, raised voices. Someone's upset, so, set it down. I look up to see what's going on. And there is a conflict between the two sides, yelling about a child being pushed. I don't know what happened to lead to that. That kid's playing and maybe bumped into him, but they said the kid was pushed and they're yelling, saying that you need to, speak to the parents if this happens, not to push a kid. And then I look back down at my phone because I'm like, all right, manager will come and, shut this down in a second, not important, none of my business. Go back down, yelling proceeds. I look back up, I think one more time, it's still going. I'm wondering, why no one's come to stop this. They're still arguing about the same thing. I look back down again, and then, that's when the gunshot happened.
Now let's stop, try to break it down a little bit. You were on a bench. Across from your group, was there a black male sitting down across from you?
Yes.
All right. When you heard this loud, this yelling, was it a female?
Yes.
All right, was a female. All right, and what was the female yelling?
She was yelling about the man pushing her child and yelling that she should have been notified instead.
Was the black male sitting down or standing up?
He was sitting down.
He was sitting down. And when he responded, he was saying something like, control your kids or something like that?
I might have given a statement back then, but right now I don't remember what he responded with. I do remember him asking them to back off, but that's about it for that.
All right. What you recall is the black male continuing to sit down and telling the woman to back off. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right. And to stay away, correct?
Correct.
Incidentally, did you ever see a child being pushed?
No.
All right. So he's telling the people to stay away. Do you also recall something to the effect of don't come near me, or just stay off me?
Yeah, some along those lines.
Those words. All right. And did he say that multiple times?
I want to say yeah.
Okay. He said it multiple times. All right, now, was the woman loud enough, you thought that something was gonna be done, the management was gonna come or something like that?
Yeah.
All right. Now, Mr. Moore, kind of, you started looking at your phone, is that correct?
Yes.
Were you trying to ignore everything?
You very much was.
Okay. So you're looking at the phone, you don't see a gun, you don't see what happened right before the gunshot, correct?
Correct.
All right. But in looking at Mr. Briggs, right, the last time you did it appear that he appeared to be encircled or surrounded?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, yeah.
All right. Was he in a corner?
When he was sitting down, when I looked up at the end, he was standing, but like they were still around him.
They were around him, is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
So you saw them kind of circling around, they were around him, is that correct?
Yeah.
Now, I want to ask, in the whole process, did you ever see Mr. Briggs chest bump anybody?
No.
Hit anybody?
No.
Actually, did you ever see him act aggressively?
No, not really.
You just saw him back up, is what he said, correct?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Now, I want to ask you a few other questions here. You stated you never saw a child push. Did you ever see a child injured?
No.
Did you ever hear the African-American male say anything racial?
No, I never heard anything.
In fact, did you ever hear cursing from the African-American male?
I don't remember anything like that.
Now, you don't know Mr. Briggs, right?
I do not.
Never met him in your life?
No.
Okay. And what you're telling me today, is that what you told police right back then, way back on February 23rd, 2019?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Please answer the prosecutor's question.
Thank you. Cross?
Thank you. Sir, good afternoon. Yeah, good afternoon. How you
Good.
doing? All right. Have we ever met before?
I mean, I saw you right out there, but
All right.
aside from that, no.
And you're friends with Mr. Hack?
Yes.
And we heard from him. Are you still friends with Mr. Hack?
Yes.
Okay, and was he sitting there with you, or was he there with you?
Yeah.
Okay. Were you all if there was, you walk into this place, are there booths on each side and then kind of a hostess stand in the front?
Yeah.
Okay. Which side were you on?
Left side. I know it was Alex Hack was sitting on my right, like right next to the door.
Okay.
And then I don't remember the order of people on my left side.
All right. So, could you step around here for just a second?
Yeah.
Just want to ask about those people who are standing now. If this is not the exterior door to go in and outside, but there's kind of a little bit of foyer, there's a door, you come in, you see the hostess stand, or the rectangle long benches on each side of that all the time?
Yeah.
Right? Which side would you want, if that's the right side?
Right here.
Okay. Hack closest to the door, was he all the way to the wall, or was he just closer to the door in relation to where you were? Okay, and you were on his then? Left side. Okay, and here, if I can just go around there a second. You said you were on your phone, right?
Yes.
And you're trying to ignore this stuff?
Yeah.
You didn't hear anybody cursing that night at each other? Okay, and you heard that the Latino female, was she pretty loud? Did you hear the defendant saying things back to her?
Yeah. I've heard him asking them to leave him alone and stuff.
They're back and forth?
Yeah.
And you said it went on for a while. How long do you think it went on?
It's been a long time. If I had to guess, it's been like 10 minutes.
All right.
It's a decent bit.
And this is involving this Latino female and the African American male, right over on the other side of the business community. Okay, when you're looking at your phone, and at some point you realize something's going to happen. between the African-American male that you saw sitting down and someone else, right?
I mean, I guess I would say yes.
What drew you to seeing how they were interacting? Did you see anything before the gunshot, or were you looking at it when it happened? Is what I'm trying to get at.
Like, when the gunshot happened?
Yes.
No. I was still looking down. I heard the banging sound. I looked up immediately.
All right. Before you heard the bang sound and looked up immediately, how long had it been since you had looked up to see what was happening on the other side of the room?
Maybe a couple minutes.
Okay. Well, you know, sometimes I say I'll be there in a minute, I'll talk about that trying. Is it like, if I'm counting 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, I mean like a full minute?
Yeah.
Before you look back up? Did you look up before you heard the loud bang?
Not like, I looked up, a couple minutes went by, then bang, I looked up again.
All right. So the couple of minutes before there was an interaction between the African-American male with the gun and this other guy, you were looking at your phone, so you don't really know what was happening over there at that time. You didn't have eyes on it, let's put it that way. Were you hearing anything at that time that you thought anything about, or were you just into your phone?
I can still hear him yelling, but like at that point, someone will be over here, someone will be over here, just mind my business.
Someone needs to break this up, right?
Yeah.
Okay. When you look back up from your phone after looking at it a minute, was the African-American male standing up?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Where was the Latino male that got shot? Where was he at that point when you looked up?
Well, the African-American male was like here. The
Uh-huh.
other guy was on the other side of her.
Okay. Was he standing up, sitting down?
Well,
This man?
he was already on the ground.
All right. So when you heard the gunshot and looked up, the Hispanic male was on the ground and the African-American male was standing up. Okay. So let's go back. We have this minute where you don't know who was around or who was next to the African-American male. I'm trying to get back before that minute. You were asking like, well, there were people around. Was there a fairly crowded lobby at the time?
Yeah, it was fairly full police.
Okay. Tell me what you mean by crowded around. If you could, look at my little, do you realize if I told you this wasn't the scale? Okay. Could you point roughly where you saw the African-American male sitting on the bench opposite you before you looked out at your phone for a minute and looked up after the shot?
No, right where it says he was.
Are you just saying that because I threw that in there, or is that
No,
actually? Okay.
there was a person next to him and then him.
Okay, fair enough. Good enough. At the time when you looked up, he was sitting there, where, you said people were around him, where were these people around? Or let me ask you, who was around him?
The Hispanic family.
Okay, and where, when you say if he was sitting here, where were they around him?
At first, they were kind of sitting across, with him.
Mm-hmm.
Then, when I heard yelling, they were kind of standing up where these letters are, kind of like yelling at him, sitting down.
Uh-huh. So if for instance, if you were the African-American guy sitting in the defendant, and you're sitting there on the bench, and I'm some of this group, I'm not very good at distances, so I'm saying, were they this close when they were discussing?
I'd say,
You kind of give me, you know what I'm saying?
if you were sitting, they were yelling at him. It's probably about this distance.
And we're not going to hold it, that's about 4 feet roughly? 3 feet, 5 feet?
Maybe 2 feet.
2 feet, okay, all right. Thank you, I'm sorry, you can have said that. And so I'm clear then, you heard arguing continuing, whether you're looking down at your phone before you heard the gunshot, but for that minute, you weren't looking exactly over there what was happening, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever hear any of the Hispanic guys saying anything, or was this the female's voice who was loud that you were hearing?
It was mostly her that I was hearing. I saw the Hispanic men get up and join into the argument, but I don't recollect anything particularly from them.
Right.
They weren't
yelling quite as loud as the lady was.
And then it's at some point then, just so I'm clear, like a minute before, they were about maybe 4 feet away from where the defendant was sitting. How long would the bench have been there at the Olive Garden before? I've got some photographs. Let me see if I can. Let me show you what's. I'm going to show you what's been entered as Commonwealth's 18 and ask you to look at that. Does that appear to be a picture of the right side of the bench when you walk in?
Yeah.
A little way. And listen, I think we've shown that photo a couple times. Maybe we don't need to put it on the screen, but how long is that bench, you're asking? 8 feet, 10 feet, 6 feet, 12 feet?
8 feet kind of sounds about right.
Okay. So it'd be fair to say that the defendant and the person sitting next to him kind of occupied the 4 feet closest to the door.
Yeah.
And then the other group, the children with their group, they occupied the 4 foot closest to the hostess stand?
Yes.
After you looked up, you heard the gunshot and looked up and saw the Hispanic guy on the floor, what did you see the defendant do at that point?
I'm pretty sure he just turned and ran out the door.
Okay. And I know you're looking at your phone for some of it, when you were looking up and down, did you see anybody with the Hispanic group, did you ever see any of them with a gun or anything in their hand?
No.
Or did you, when the guy hit the floor and was laying there, was he laying face up or face down or on the side?
He was on his back.
He was on his back at that time? Did you see his hands?
I probably could have. I don't remember anything special in his hands.
Okay, that was going to be my question. Did you see anything that was a gun or even would have looked like a gun, like a light or a cell phone or anything like that in his hands?
No.
All right. At the time you looked up after you heard the gunshot, was it just the defendant and the guy laying on the floor, or the people around him at that time?
I mean, like, the people who were also arguing were standing. I don't think they were like, once the shot fired, I looked up, they backed up at least a little bit.
When you looked up, were they close to the guy on the floor, or were they back away from the guy on the floor when you looked up?
They were both. They were close, but they were backing up.
Joe, I don't have any further questions this witness. Thank you.
Thank you. Redirect?
Yes. Briefly. Sir, after the shot, you saw the defendant, you saw Mr. Briggs, you never saw him waving a gun, right?
No, he just
Never saw that.
turned and went out.
Second, you talked about the words that you heard Mr. Briggs say in this argument, and really the words you remember are stay away or don't come here or back up, correct?
Yeah, not verbatim, but it's something along those lines. Yeah.
Something along those lines. And finally, when you gave your statement to police back on page 6, back on right after it happened, if you want to look at lines 23 to 25, there on page 6.
You want me to read them?
No, just read them to yourself.
Oh, okay.
Did it appear that, the last time you saw the defendant, did it appear that he was kind of surrounded?
Yeah.
And is that what you told police?
Yeah.
Nothing further.
Any recross?
Just a second, ma'am. No, I don't, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, sir. You may step down. Defense may call your next witness.
Judge, the defense would call Devin O'Brien. No, he should be outside.
Come on up, sir. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Could you state your name for the record?
Devin O'Brien.
And what do you do, Devin?
I'm a mechanical engineer for a company called Speed Associates.
Back on February 23rd, 2019, did you go to the Olive Garden?
Yes.
And with whom did you go to the Olive Garden?
I went with 3 of my friends, Alex Hack, John Savato, and Zach Moore.
If you could just keep your voice up, okay? And see if you can attend, maybe look at the jury, okay? Now, have you ever testified before?
I have not.
Okay. I know you've been looking forward to this. I'm kidding, okay? Just gonna ask you some questions. Try to relax, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I could, you're with these people, and at some point, where were you in the Olive Garden?
We were in the waiting room.
In the waiting room?
Yes, at the benches.
Were you all on a bench?
Yes.
All right. And at some point that evening, was there a commotion, or did you hear loud voices?
Yes.
Okay. What did you hear?
Basically, the 2 parties across from us were arguing back and forth between each other.
And did you hear a female voice?
Yes.
And was it loud?
Yes.
Yelling?
Yes.
All right. And what was that female voice saying?
She was basically describing that, yelling to him about not touching my child. I didn't get full details on fully, but that was the main thing that kind of stuck out.
And was the woman standing up or sitting down?
She was standing up.
And the African-American male, was he sitting down?
He was sitting down.
All right. And so when she's yelling at him, does he remain seated?
Correct.
All right. And what did he respond to her?
Saying along the lines of just have better control of your child.
All right. Now, did he get up?
He did not get up. I did not see him get up.
Okay. Did he approach in any way the woman who was yelling at him?
No.
Stayed where he was?
Yes.
All right. Now, at that point, at some point, did you see a Hispanic male get involved?
Yes.
Okay. And the Hispanic male, what did he do?
He kind of walked over towards the African American guy, kind of stood in front of him while he was still seated, and just kind of like put his arms out towards him, almost like either a shove or ready to fight.
Okay, ready to fight? All right. And when you say he went toward him, when he started toward the African American male, was that male still sitting down?
Yes.
And so was he walking essentially a number of steps to get to him?
Was not far of a walk.
Pardon me?
It was not far of a walk.
But it was a walk?
A bit. I mean.
He went to where he was?
Yes.
All right. Now he goes to where he was, and you described how the man put his arms out, correct?
Yes.
And as if what?
As if to start a fight.
To start a fight, is that right?
That's what it looked like to me, yes.
All right, and that's what it looked like to you, and that's what you told police back that night, correct?
Yes.
And just to back up, after this was all over, did you give a statement to police?
Yes.
And was that statement the best of your memory at the time?
Yes.
And did you tell police that it did appear to you that the person, Hispanic male, wanted to fight?
Correct.
All right. Now, at this point, did you direct your attention elsewhere?
No.
Were you able to see a punch
I did not see a punch.
or a gun?
No.
And do you know, did you look away? Did you try to get it hosted? Do you know what was going on that you missed those things?
I may have been looking away a little bit, but the way that he was standing was also facing away from me, kind of like in front of me.
So it was hard to see?
Correct.
Okay. So you didn't see a punch or a gun. Of course, you're not saying there wasn't a punch. You saw the person getting ready to punch, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yes.
All right. Now, taking the one side, okay, being Hispanic, and the other side being Mr. Briggs, who was the one that was, which one was calmer?
Mr. Briggs, the African-American male.
Do you know him at all?
No.
Did you see him being aggressive that night at all?
Not that I remember.
Okay. Well, you stated that, you gave a statement that night, correct?
Yes.
Did he stay on the bench?
Yes.
Do you recall him cursing?
No.
Do you recall him even getting up at the bench and pushing anybody?
No.
Do you recall him in any manner, before this happened, being aggressive?
No.
Finally, sir, you told all this to police, correct?
Yes.
Finally, did you hear Mr. Briggs, the African-American male, did you hear him making any racial slurs?
I did not.
You did not?
I did not.
Nothing.
All right, cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir. You never saw any, you didn't see a punch thrown that night, did you?
I did not.
Okay. And when you're talking about that you may have been, Mr. Riggs said you're doing a lot of other things, when this incident happened, you were looking right at it, right? So if I said, well, a lot of things were happening, you missed the punch, that wouldn't be true. You were looking at this incident when these two men came together, weren't you?
Correct.
Like, you saw them going together, right? You told Mr. Egger you thought there might be a fight, right?
It looked like there was
Right.
going to be a fight.
You weren't looking around at that time, your eyes were glued on what was happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right? Could you step down here for a second, sir? What I have here is Bob. Literally not a mechanical engineer in my phone, okay? If this, and let me ask you, if you can step back. If this is like the interior doors, they come in, and this is the hostess stand, and there is a bench on each side, does that look roughly, not to scale, roughly like with, I'm gonna ask you to know what some other people have written on it, because I don't want to suggest anything to you. What side were you on? I was over here. Okay. And, who were you over there with?
It would be my friend John, me, Alex, and Zach.
Okay. And when you saw, you heard some things, you didn't hear anybody cussing either way, anything that night? Didn't have to think about it? Okay, that's cool. But at some point, you could see where the defendant was sitting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you were able to see a Hispanic family?
Yeah.
So you were over, were they over here with their kids on the bench and they were standing up because their kids were on the bench? Probably moving around a little bit.
Yes.
Right? Did you see the guy with the car seat baby carrier? Do you recall that?
I do not recall.
Okay. To your best of their knowledge, were there two Hispanic males and two Hispanic females in the group with the kids?
To my knowledge, yes.
All right. And do the kids, if I suggest you, some of them look like they were 4 years old, some of them maybe 5 or 6 or 7. Did that look kind of the age appropriate you were looking at?
Yes.
And at some point you said one of the Hispanic males steps toward the defendant, right? Now, when you see this, are you kind of looking, like if you're a Hispanic male, are you looking aside or are you kind of behind him when he steps toward the defendant?
Behind him.
Okay, so wherever the defendant is located over here, a Hispanic male stepped toward him, you were looking, it would be fair to say, accurate, in the back of the Hispanic male? Okay, and good, so that's how we have the ordinance. So you were sort of a little further up on that bench on the left, right? On the left, right, on the left side, correct?
Yes.
All right, and so you saw the back of the Hispanic male. What did you see from the back? Did you see him make contact with the defendant?
Not direct contact, but I did see his arms moving up.
Okay, from like, show me how, if I'm looking at the back from, show me what his arms did. It's kind of what I'm getting to. Did they, well, you know, I'm.
Kind of out.
They went out. Did you ever see any contact from your vantage point?
I did not see any contact.
Is that because his body obstructed, whether they came in contact with each other, you wouldn't have been able to see it from your vantage point, or are you saying it didn't happen?
I believe from my vantage.
All right. Did you ever see anyone go like this did you see the defendant ever do something like this?
I did not.
You were kind of looking toward, you'd have seen what you could see of the front of him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're seeing the back of the Hispanic male. Now, we've heard, you didn't see this, did you?
No.
Okay. In fact, that whole night, you never saw this, right?
No.
All right. And that night, you saw what you saw them go together. You never saw contact between them. What happened, right?
Correct.
Now, you did hear a gunshot go off, right?
Yes.
Were you looking at the back of the Hispanic male when you heard the gunshot go off?
Yes.
But did you see the gunshot go off?
I did not see the gun.
All right. So the gun was, from your vision, it was obscured the back of the Hispanic male. You couldn't see the gun come up, right?
Correct.
What did the Hispanic male do once the gunshot went off?
Immediately fell to the ground.
Do you remember if he was face up or face down? Or on the side, I guess is an option.
I would say face up from my memory.
All right. At that time, or prior to that time, did you see anything in his hand, a gun, a knife, a weapon?
I did not.
All right, sir, if you will, you can return to your seat there. After the gunshot rang out and the Hispanic male fell to the ground, were you able to see the defendant at that point?
He immediately ran out the door.
All right. After the Hispanic male fell down, shot, and kind of cleared your view, were you able to see the gun at that point?
I did not see the gun, no.
Do you recall how the defendant was dressed that night?
To my memory right now, no. The best is probably through the statement that I had.
All right. Well, I'm just asking you. When you got there, you had heard some fussing going on, let's put that, on the other side of the room, between these two parties, right?
Yes.
And just so I know that the African Americans, did you think that the defendant was with anybody that night, or did you know?
He was with another female.
Okay. And was this female sitting on, if he's on the bench where you described, is she sitting closer to the door or closest to the hostess stand?
Closest to the door.
Okay.
Similar to what's on the...
So it would have been female and then the defendant?
Yes.
Occupying sort of the bottom half of the bench, and then the children of the Hispanic family, and then occupying the upper part of the bench, is that?
Yes.
When you saw, you tell us that the Hispanic male, how many steps did you think he took?
I would say roughly 5, 6 steps.
From
one end of the bench to the other.
And that got him down to where you saw this, right?
Yes.
So the Hispanic family was 5 to 6 steps away from where the defendant was sitting. Roughly. That's correct, right?
Yes.
At any time, did you see the defendant laying down in the corner? You know how where the door comes in, the interior door, not the boot, it kind of forms a 90-degree corner?
Yeah.
Did you at any time see the defendant laying back in the corner of that booth?
I do not recall.
All right. When you said the Hispanic male took the 5 or 6 steps toward him, could you see the defendant at that point?
Yes.
I mean, I understand you're looking at the back, but could you see the head, the arms, or what part of him, or were you set off enough that you could see part of his body?
Just a little bit of him, just a little part of his body.
Okay. Could you see his face?
Slightly.
Or could you see part of his head, to be accurate?
Yeah.
Okay. When you watched this step toward him, did you ever see his head or body disappear from you, like it fell back on the ground or anything?
The African-American man?
Yes.
I did not.
Okay. And when you saw the two of these fellows together, were there a bunch of other people down on top of the defendant or anything like that at that time?
No.
At the time you heard the gunshot, would it be fair to say that those two males were the only two people right there in that little circle, if we did, let's say, a 2-foot circle around them?
Yes.
Do you recall when the gunshot rang out where the female that was sitting next to the defendant but closer to the door where she was at that time? Was she remained sitting or had she stood up and moved?
I believe she remained seating.
When the defendant shot the Hispanic male, Jose, when he fell to the ground, did anyone run toward the defendant at that point?
I did not see anyone run towards the defendant.
Let me ask you this, and I'll be fair to you, because I didn't ask you. Were you still looking at him when the gunshot went off, or did you turn and head the other direction? I just want to make sure you were looking that way after the gunshot went off.
After the gunshot went off, he fell to the ground, and it took me a few seconds to kind of realize what happened. By that point, I believe the African-American male was already out the door, but I immediately left.
Did you recognize it as a gunshot when you heard it, or were you thinking anything else?
It sounded like a balloon pop at first, so it didn't recognize as a gunshot immediately until I saw on the ground.
But you're sure they would have been the only two people right there together when you heard the balloon pop that ended up being the gun and Jose fell to the ground, right?
Correct.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you. Redirect.
Thank you. Just have a few. I gather when the actual incident occurred, was your view obstructed? That is, when the gunshot went off? Were people between you and the defendant and Mr. Munoz?
No one was in between us.
Was your view obstructed at all?
No.
Do you know how you missed the gun then?
I believe he was just in front of him.
Pardon me?
He was in front of the African-American male, so.
Okay, so that was, I see. So the person shot was in front of the African-American?
Yes.
So to that extent, your view was obstructed?
Yes.
So you couldn't see a gun. If your friend, Mr. Hack, said there was a punch, would you dispute that?
Judge Whitbrook.
You may.
I'll go on.
Okay. All right.
Let me ask.
Objection sustained.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I want to say this. Is it possible there was a punch that you couldn't see?
Not that I recall.
Okay, but for sure he went over there to punch him, is what you believe?
That or assault.
Pardon me?
That or assault him, or it looked like it.
Looked like he was going to assault him. Is that? All right. And the length of the bench, is that what you said? Is that how long it was, the length of the bench that the Hispanic man went to Mr. Briggs?
Yes.
And at the time of the incident, you already described Mr. Munoz being between you and Mr. Briggs. I'm going to ask you, did you, until then, ever see Mr. Briggs even stand up?
I do not recall him standing up.
All right. And finally, I want to ask you, when you say assault, that was what was evident to you that the Hispanic man was going to do?
Either, it appeared like he was about ready to fight him.
And again, you can be obviously asked a lot of questions, but is that what you told police that night?
Yes.
Is that still the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Recross?
I do not, sir, thank you.
Thank you, sir. You may step down. Counsel, please approach. All right, time to break for the day.
Judge, can we just rest in front of the jury?
That's what I wanted to see. Okay, you want to rest today?
Yeah, all we're gonna do is admit the exhibits already marked but not admitted, including the carrying concealed, and then we rest. So that'll take all of 1 minute.
Okay. In terms of Monday, I don't have girls' jury instructions yet.
I have them, Judge, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
I'm almost done, but I'm still on with the girls as well. And then I'm thinking probably take 30 minutes on Monday morning to deal with anything before closing. So what time do you want to start Monday?
Well, we're gonna get rid of the DV today, all that, so we're ready to start Monday.
Yeah, I mean, really, I'll do.
Well,
Go ahead.
No, I meant like Monday morning, we'll finish instructions, we can handle DV, anything we need to do before closing.
I could even do instructions this afternoon, and I'll do
I
DV
cannot.
this afternoon. Okay.
At this
I'll
point,
do
I'm
this.
taking a
No,
lunch
I
break.
got you.
Your Honor,
But I'll do
Start making
DV too.
angry
Your Honor,
decisions.
if we got here at 9, would
Should
be
be
fine
good.
with us. We can do earlier, is that?
Yeah, I can.
It's
be here.
9.
I know. I'm so
Give us-
sorry, Your Honor.
Give us a date, a time, not a date, a
No,
time.
I just want, if you want to start at 9:30, close at 10, we can, but if you want to start at 9, we
How
close
about
at 9.
9:15?
Okay.
That'll give us 45 minutes.
Okay, so start at 9:15, so we're not going to have the jury here till 10.
That's
Is that-
correct,
okay,
yes.
All right.
All right, so if I can just,
Yes.
thank you.
All right, the defense may call your next witness.
Your Honor, at this time, we would actually move to enter into evidence the exhibits Mr. McGee had marked and published to the jury. I think it's defense exhibits 2 through 7, which would include all the carrying concealed documents. We would move to introduce those into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection from the Commonwealth, Your Honor.
All right, so admitted.
Judge, at this time, the defense rests.
Thank you, Mr. Eggert. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to break for the day. We will begin Monday at 10 a.m. So same admonition applies for the weekend. Do not discuss this case with anyone, including each other. Don't do any independent research about this case. Do not form any opinions about this case, and we will begin back Monday with closing arguments. All right, so you are excused for the rest of the day. Thank you all.
All rise for the jury.
Oh, and lunch orders.
I've got
Okay, good. 10.
Judge, if they could also give me a copy of their instructions. I know you got one.
I don't have them.
I'm running right now, Judge.
You gonna email them?
Yeah, I had,
Send them to Judge.
I'm sorry, I had emailed them to our appellate guy to say, take one last look at these, and I guess I didn't hear back.
Okay. Once I get a chance to review those, I'll email you all
Thank you.
my instructions so you have them before Monday.
Thank you.
Mr. McGee, I don't think I have your email address. Do you want to give that to me, or do you want me to just send it to Ms. Helmers?
If you send it to Ms. Helmers, they'll send it.
All right. Okay, I'm going to take us off the record.
Wow. Thank you. I'll protest.